8. I clearly hadn't gotten anywhere with either shop, and it appeared to me that no one was going to give Paul West's ex-wife an opportunity to make good. There was going to have to be a way to get through to these people, only I didn't know what that was. Maybe being at the library with Abby would distance myself from my thoughts, and something would pop into my head. The library was a typical library. The reference desk was in the middle of the big open room and surrounded by large bookshelves that were labeled with the genre of the section of books. There was a children's section in the rear. Their small voices and giggles were the only sound in the quiet building. I found Abby pushing a cart with books stacked a mile high in the nonfiction section. "I hear you're making quite a stir around here," she said. "I guess I'm going to have to figure something else out on how to get the campground back in shape." I scanned down the books. "You just keep on being who you are, and they'll come around. It might take longer than you anticipated to sell the place." She smiled. "But mark my words, everyone will help out when they see that you are doing the right thing. Me and all the girls know you are." "Thank you, but I don't want to think about that right now." I put my hand on the cart. "I'm here to work." "Have you ever worked in a library?" she asked. "Worked?" I wanted to laugh, but her face was so serious that I kept the fact that I'd maybe even used a library a handful of times, and that was my high school library. "No, but I do know how to put books back, and these look like they need to go back." It was a perfect start for me. "Great!" She checked her watch. "It gives me free time to get story time together." "That's so cute." I glanced back at the children's section. I heard them when I walked in. "Unfortunately, we have the children's section in the back because they like to run away, and they usually can't make it to the door before we can grab them." She gave a half smile. "Anyways, just let me know if you need anything." "I will. Thanks, Abby, for giving me this chance." I wanted to make sure that I thanked her. "It's nothing." She brushed it off. "I pulled you some reference books for RV owners, and I put them on the counter so you wouldn't forget." "Thank you. You know, I get why people are skeptical of me, but like you said, I'm going to show them differently." I put my other hand on the cart and pushed it down the aisle she was working in before I'd gotten there. Abby hurried off and left me to figure it out, though she thought I knew what I was doing. How hard could it be? After comparing the numbers and the letters, it wasn't as tough as it looked. I was happy to get the first stack of books put away and got a little sidetracked when I got to the travel section and found a book on normal. There were all sorts of photos of happy trails in its heyday and the lake. I couldn't help but wonder if it looked like this when Paul won it in college. He was much older than me, and if I did the math, say he was 21 when he won the bet, he was 61 now. That had been 40 years ago. I remember Alvin Dieters saying he was in his 50s, and I wondered if he'd remembered what it looked like. Maybe I could go back and see him and approach him that way, really get to know him instead of just asking for credit. "Are you almost done?" Abby peeped around the corner of the travel book shelf. "Oh, you've not finished but one shelf? It's been an hour." "It has?" My jaw dropped. "I'm so sorry. I picked up this book on normal and just got lost in it." I'd heard many times from people how they could get lost in a library for hours. I never understood that until this moment. "Well, just leave it. You can finish after story hour." She held out a book and a bag. "Story hour?" I looked between her and the bag. "Yeah, it's fun. I thought you'd enjoy that." Abby was wrong. By far wrong. "Kids don't really like me," I shrugged. 3/4 of normal don't like you either, but you're still here," she joked. "Here, you'll be fine. Just read the book. The craft is a color page today, so that's easy." "Craft? Easy? Trust me when I say that I can screw up a color page." I waved my hands in front of me. "You'll be fine." She jammed the bag in my hand and then the book. "Take it as a lesson. If you can handle the children in normal, you can handle their parents when you start working on that fundraiser." She didn't leave any room for me to protest as she walked away. Story time felt like it went longer than 30 minutes. I'd been told several times by the kids that they couldn't see the pictures as I read, so I quickly learned to hold the book out in front of me and try to read sideways. Then someone said that all the characters sounded the same, so I changed my voice a few times, and they laughed, so I kept changing my voice with different characters. It was the craft coloring page that took me under. Some kids broke the crayons, some kids crumbled the paper, while some just fell asleep. Trying to keep everyone engaged was exhausting.
Librarian, I never figured you for the type.
The familiar southern drawl snickered from behind me. Hank. I stood up from trying to get one of the children to sit in color. Detective Hank. I gulped. Detective Sharp. I looked away when I felt myself blush. I had to get a job, and this
seems to be harder than you thought.
He laughed.
You look frustrated. Let me help.
I took a step back. If you think you can do better.
Hey, kids.
He spoke above their whimpers, giggles, and chatter.
Who would like a police sticker?
The kids ran screaming towards him with their hands flailing in the air.
Great. When you finish coloring your paper, bring it to me for a sticker.
He spoke in a gentle and kind tone. Quickly, the children I'd been trying to get to color along with the rest of the kids hurried back to the miniature tables and were silent as they colored the page. I didn't know I could bribe them. I smiled. Thanks for the tip. I need stickers. I'm guessing you aren't here to check out a book.
I'm here to check you out.
He looked at me. I wasn't sure if that was a pickup line, but he completely clarified.
Not check you out, but talk to you. And I heard over at the diner about you going to the Tough Nickel, and then you went to see Alvin.
Gosh, word sure does travel fast around here. I rolled my eyes and put my hands on my hips. Everyone in town thinks I killed Paul.
Did you?
He asked. My head tilted. I glared.
I cleared all that up with everyone. I told them you didn't, because the preliminary report came back, and it appears Paul had been there a few days.
His words were music to my ears, only for the fact that it showed I didn't kill him.
According to the pings on your cell phone.
You pinged my cell phone? My jaw dropped as I interrupted him.
I got a warrant.
He pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket.
You weren't anywhere near normal.
I told you that, but it still upsets me that Paul was murdered. You have a whole town of suspects, I said, and began to rattle off. Not that I think Ty Randall did it, but he has reason. And then you have Henry, who I really don't think did it. But what about Dottie Swaggart?
Maybe reading to little kids and being in charge of a trailer park is what you need to stick to, he said.
What does that mean? I drew back.
It means that you aren't a detective. I'm only here to let you know that you're off the hook. You can leave normal today if you wanted.
He looked down when a little child walked up and tugged on his pants with their scribbled page done. I'm not leaving normal, I spat. I'm staying, and I'm going to fix up Happy Trails.
Really?
He looked all sorts of not happy and a little shocked, rolled up into one. He took out some of those stickers he'd promised the kids and doled them out to the little hands like candy. Yes, really, I confirmed, and took a few more coloring pages as he gave them the sticker.
I just figured you'd go back to your old life.
He apparently didn't listen to me last night after I told him why I was in normal. That tip of my eye started to twitch, and the anger boiled inside of me. You figured? I questioned.
Are you mad that I thought you'd leave?
He questioned, his voice a little louder.
It's not every day that someone with your social status decides to live in a rundown camper in a rural Kentucky town they know nothing about, unless you do know more about Kentucky than you're letting on.
I see that you've been snooping in my background, which was a lifetime ago. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Hank. I put an emphasis on his name. But I own a campground that needs to be fixed up. I'm sorry that you figured wrong about me and my intention to stay in town. I left out the fact that I had no place to go or zero cash to do it with. Normal was all I had, and he came along with it whether I liked him or not, because currently I wasn't liking him. He took a step back.
According to my sources, your family perished in a horrific house fire, and you survived. There was talk about how you got out and not everyone else.
He brought back memories that had taken a lot of therapy and money to get rid of.
Then you had to live with foster families up until you turned 18.
His eyes lowered, as did his voice.
Why is it that you're really here in Normal?
Listen. I lowered my voice when I noticed there were no children in the children's section, and Abby had peeked her head around the corner. As much as you and everyone in town would like to believe I don't have a caring bone in my body, I do. I want to help out the people in Normal, and I'm going to prove it. You didn't hear a word I said to you last night, did you? I tried not to even comment on what he'd said about my past.
I didn't listen because I was busy making sure you had electricity.
His southern charm turned on, and I tried to assess if he did it on purpose or if it just came naturally. Recap. I put my hand up for him to stop talking. My only home is that RV and happy trails. Yes, my entire family died in a house fire. It was awful, but not as bad as being thrown from one foster family to the next. I got out of Kentucky, and I'm sorry if it's not the grand place everyone thinks it is, because it's not fond for me. I sucked in a deep breath and stuck my hand up when he opened his mouth. Now that you know I'm not a suspect, I'm going to try my hardest to make Happy Trails what it used to be. It might take me years, but I'm here, and I'm going to do it. I'm terribly upset about what Paul did to the citizens in Normal. Whether you want to believe it or not, I never will excuse Paul for what he did, but he didn't deserve what someone did to him either.
Are you trying to tell me that not only are you staying here, but you're not going to stop snooping around with this list of suspects you have in your head?
He questioned. It means that I'm going to try to make everything right. If that means making good on the people he wronged here in Normal while trying to figure out who killed him, I hesitated. Yeah, that's what that means. We stood there in silence, staring at each other. He opened his mouth and shut it a couple of times, like he wanted to say something to me. It appeared I'd stumped him, and he didn't have the words. As he did this little internal battle with himself, the words that had come out of my mouth about how I was going to make everything right really did start to settle into my soul. Then it dawned on me. I wasn't here to just get Happy Trails back to the way it was, but to make everything right with everyone in Normal. That also included Paul and what happened to him. Here's the book for the next book club. Abby handed me a worn-out paperback book that was kept together with duct tape.
I've got to get going.
Hank gave me one last long, hard look before he turned around and walked out of the library. I don't read. I reluctantly took the book and curled it to my chest as I thought about Ty Randall and his situation. He was the first person I was going to see in the matter of who did Paul in. 9. You can't leave your clothes in the washer, Queenie was scolding a young girl on the other side of the laundry club. It'll get all mildewed and stinky. She threw her hip to the side and planted her hand on the lime green waistband of the tights she was wearing. Who wants to smell a stinky uniform when you're trying to deliver delicious food? I couldn't help but smile. The poor young lady didn't look more than 20 years old. She had her dishwater blonde hair pulled in a high ponytail. I could tell by the length of her ponytail that her hair must have been long, because the end of the ponytail went past her shoulders. She had a thick waist and full hips, and stood about 5 feet 8 inches tall. There was a look of terror on her face when she watched Queenie push buttons and pour liquid in the cups of the laundry machine. "How did the library gig go?" Dottie asked. She was sitting at a card table where Queenie's fake crystal ball had once sat. Crazy. My brows shot up. First, I got sidetracked when I was putting the returned books back on the shelf. I held up a couple of the books about normal. I found these in the nonfiction section and was really happy to see that the brochure and the photos in the book look similar, so we can get the RV park back in tip-top shape. And now I think I can figure out how this whole RV living thing works with the books Abby pulled for me. She also found me some books on how to run a business.
That's what you call crazy?
Dottie asked and pointed to the coffee station.
Fresh pot. Go grab you one and fill me back up.
She exchanged her coffee mug with the books in my arms.
And the book club book.
Yeah, Abby shoved that into my hands after I had to do the story time for the children, I said over my shoulder on the way to the coffee. And crafts. That was crazy, because I've never been good with kids. And Hank, I poured, and Dottie interrupted me.
Detective Sharp? She asked.
Yeah, he came in to talk to me, and he actually got the kids to do the craft by bribing them with stickers. I walked back with a cup in each hand and sat them on the table.
Did he say anything about the investigation?
She asked, which reminded me about what Bets had said about overhearing the older ladies in the community gossip as she cleans their houses. He said that Paul had been dead longer than I'd been in town, and he'd subpoenaed my cell phone records to show that I'd not been in contact with Paul by checking the location feature. Who knew phones were so smart? I brought the cup up to my lips. I told him I didn't do it, and I gave him a list of people who might have had motive from normal.
That's why I don't have one of them darned cell phones. The government is spying on me.
Queenie headed over to the puzzle table and gave what was already completed a good once-over.
No one cares what you're doing, Queenie.
Dottie rolled her eyes. Queenie shot Dottie a look, but Dottie didn't see it. I gave Queenie a smile and mouthed that I cared about her. She grinned.
Why do you think it was someone from normal?
Dottie shifted in her chair. Because he did a lot of people wrong here and was found here. Not just money, either. I gnawed on the thought of whether I should ask her about the conversation Abby heard and just went for it. Dottie? I put my cup down and reached over the table, cupping her hand in mine. I understand that Paul gave you a sob story, but I also understand that he was planning on firing you.
How do you know that?
She jerked her hand away and leaned further back in the chair, crossing her arms over her chest. I'm finding out really fast that normal is very small. People talk around here, even to strangers. I circled my finger around my mug and sat there in silence.
You think I killed him?
She leaned forward and tapped her fingernail on the table.
That just beats the band, Mae West. You come waltzing into our town, and she circled her finger around the air around her, take you in, flaws and all, because, honey, you've got a lot more issues than Time magazine.
I stammered from the little bit of tongue lashing I was getting. It wasn't my intent at all.
Don't go and give me no excuse. I didn't kill that sorry sack of you-know-what, and I don't have to explain nothing to you or Hank Sharp.
She jumped up and grabbed her pleather cigarette case that had a top snap closure. In a flash, she scurried over to the door and shoved it open, causing the glass door to slam into the outside wall of the building and light her cig as she sat on the curb of the sidewalk.
Now what did you do?
Queenie glowered at me and rushed out the door to Dottie's side. I sat there wondering how to make the situation right, but she sure was acting guilty instead of just telling me about the fight, I thought as I watched her stiff lips fussing as the smoke rolled out with each word. Every once in a while, she jabbed the air with her cigarette and fingers towards me. "Excuse me," the young girl who Queenie was helping got my attention. She had on a pair of black skinny jeans with black Converse tennis shoes on. "Do you know how to start this dryer? Mine broke and my boyfriend is out of town." "Sure. In fact, I didn't know how to use it until yesterday." My heart tugged, knowing that without Dottie, I'd never survived my last couple of days in Normal, where nothing was normal. "Really?" she questioned. "Really? I think we should write the directions down and post them, don't you?" I took her quarter and showed her what the best option was for the quick dry cycle, since she didn't have a whole lot. "That would be a good idea. Thanks." She nodded and went back to the bookshelf. "No problem." I glanced back out of the door on my way back to the front. Queenie was rubbing Dottie's back. Dottie had her forehead planted in the palm of her hand. "I'm Mae." I wanted her to feel welcome, because it was only a few short days ago that I was here in her shoes and didn't know a soul in the laundry club. I recalled how good I felt when they helped me out, and I wanted to pay the kindness forward. "Trudy Bull," she said. "It's nice to meet you, and I'm so glad you helped me." She put her hands in prayer pose with a small bow.
"I can write down some directions. That way no one will bother me with it,"
Queenie grumbled and walked over to the bookshelf where there was a pad of paper and pens stuck in a coffee mug. After I helped Trudy, I thought it was about time to start taking responsibilities for all of my actions, and not just Paul. I headed outside and ignored Dottie's under-breath comments on how I wasn't invited to their little party. "I'm crashing it." I sat down on the curb next to her and realized I'd never sat on a curb before. "I owe you an apology. I didn't mean for you to think I thought you killed Paul. I know he did wrong, and even though he was a criminal, he was my ex-husband and was great up until the FBI raided our house. I'm trying to work through all those feelings I have. Was he the real man I fell in love with 5 years ago and married only a couple of years ago? Was he the man that took everyone's money and a criminal? Did he get caught up into something that he just couldn't get out of?" I shook my head. These are questions, as someone who is trying to make his actions right, that I'm asking myself. I think I need to figure out who killed him and why in order to move on.
"In the process, you're willing to say that I did it to Hank?" Dottie asked. "I never once asked if you killed Paul."
"You didn't. He asked if I knew anyone who, in the RV park, would want Paul dead. Trust me, you're not the only one. I told him that someone got to Paul before me." Both of us laughed. "I'm sorry."
"If you wanted to know about the conversation, I'm more than happy to tell you,"
she said, and put the cigarette out on the edge of the curb.
"He came by once a month to collect any lot fees, and I gave you the printout. A few of the people on the list, I paid their fee with what little money I'd got from Paul. He must have known something was coming down the pipeline with all his dealings, because the last time I heard from him, he told me that he was going to come live here and take over. When I asked him about my job, he said, and I repeat, 'Toots, times are hard. I've got to do what I've got to do.'" "She didn't take too kindly to being called Toots," Queenie said in a matter-of-fact way with a hard nod. "I was there, me and Henry. She had a good comeback." "I'm afraid that comeback just might be what will get me trouble."
Dottie twirled the edge of the curl around her finger.
"I told him which way was which, and how ashamed he should be about taking people's money. I wasn't stupid. I watched them big news channels. When I started talking to people around here, they started telling me how he'd been investing their money or something like that. I'm not going to lie no more. I was the one who called the FBI. I gave the tip, and I even warned Paul, telling him that I was going to get him back."
"Do you think he was on his way here after he broke out of jail to come confront you?" I asked.
"I don't know why he came here. I figured it was for you, but then I wondered if, like you, he had no other place to go."
She shrugged. We all looked up as we heard a car approaching, Hank's car. We stood up and waited for him to park. "You didn't tell the FBI who you were?"
I asked. No, I called anonymously. I even did it from a payphone in another town. She put her hand over her brows to shield the sun. He looks like he means business. She dropped her hand and greeted him after he made it over to us. Dottie, ladies. He looked at me last. There was a bit of a smirk on his face. Dottie, can I talk to you for a minute? Sure, Hank. She walked over to the side where he'd pointed, and he followed.
Hey, you two. Bats walked up with a couple of bags in her hands. She leaned to look around us. What's going on?
We don't know. Well, we have an idea. Queenie cocked a brow. We won't even bother giving you a free guess.
Paul West?
She asked.
Mm-hmm.
My nose drew a big line up in the air, and an equally big one down to my chin.
Let's go inside and give them some space.
Queenie held the door open for us to walk in.
I've got some good stuff for you.
Bats held the bags up a little when she walked into the laundromat.
I went back to the tough nickel after how he treated you this morning. I told him how ashamed he should be treating you that way when I see him every Sunday sitting in the front pew next to his wife.
Queenie nudged me. That's why we keep her in the group. She's good at using what we like to call our mama's God guilt. She pulled out twinkly lights, flower necklaces, some blow-up palm trees, and beach-themed paper cups with napkins, along with a couple of those flamingo lawn ornaments. They'd seen better days, but wasn't all the chipping-looking stuff coming back in style?
I've got tons more in my car, she beamed with pride. I told Lester what you were doing and how you were going to bring back the tourists to normal and how good it was going to be for the community to see you in church. We had a lot of leftovers from our beach-themed vacation Bible school that Lester donated it all.
Did you say see me in church? I pointed to myself.
Why, yes. You are now part of the community.
Her smile faded when she realized I wasn't smiling.
You do believe in church, right?
I bit the inside of my cheek.
Yeah,
but I've not been in a long, and I mean long time. So maybe you should take it all back. I gulped.
Don't be silly. We will see you in church on Sunday.
She patted my arm and headed back into the door that read office in rectangular, uneven letters. You just got Mama God guilted. Queenie drew her hands up over her head and tipped over at the waist, bending down to touch the ground. I've got to go to class. You want to go? Good for stress. No, I want to talk to Dottie and get a jump on cleaning up the RV park. I watched out the door when I saw that Hank was walking back to his car and left Dottie standing there with her shoulders slumped. Strike class is in the morning. Queenie did some sort of move that I think was supposed to resemble her hitting a punching bag, but it looked more like a wet noodle to me. You should come. Maybe one day. I was promising a lot of one days to people around here. One day church, one day jazzercise. I wondered if that one day would come. I pushed the door open and poked my head out. Are you okay? Queenie pushed past me and gave me a wave over her shoulder. I've got to get to class, but I'll call after dance mix. Dottie acknowledged her. I'll see you in the morning, Queenie said to Dottie, only this time she kicked her leg out to the side. I'm going to head on back home. Dottie let out a big sigh. Do you need a ride? I was hoping you'd ask. I offered a peace-offering smile. Then we can talk about it on the way. She dug her keys out of her pocket. Let me grab the stuff Bets brought and tell her goodbye. I'll be right back. I swung the door open and walked over to Bets's office door, knocking on it. She called for me to come in. Hey, I'm heading back home with Dottie. Do you want me to grab the stuff from you? I asked. I can bring it over in the morning when I give you a ride to the library. That is, if you need a ride. She was sorting through some paperwork on her desk. That sounds perfect. I'll see you tomorrow. I looked at Bets for a moment longer before I headed out to meet Dottie's old pickup truck. Hank said I'm a suspect.
Dottie spoke with the unlit cigarette stuck between the corners of her lip. She jerked the gear shift that was on the neck of the steering wheel down into drive.
He said that he had some folks come forward with some information about my conversation with him. I actually thought Paul and I were friends up until the last time he'd called.
I'm sorry. He made everyone feel like they were important in his life. Just look at all the people who invested with him and gave him all their money. I looked out the window as we headed out of town.
I'm one payment away from my camper being taken away from me.
She curled her lips together.
Like Henry, I had some savings. My husband and son were killed in a car crash.
I looked over at her. She swallowed, hard.
The trucking company that hit and killed them gave me a real big settlement.
Her voice trailed off. Please don't tell me that you... I didn't have to finish my sentence. By the look on her face, I knew the answer to my question. Can you stop? Dottie brought the car to a halt in the middle of the street right in front of Normal Diner.
What's wrong? She asked.
I forgot I was going to meet someone about the fundraiser at the diner. I planted my palm on my forehead. I'm forgetting a lot of things lately.
Do you want me to wait? She asked.
No. You go on home and get some rest. We're going to figure out who did this to Paul. I pinched a smile. You aren't the only one in Normal that wanted to kill Paul. 10. The diner was actually really cute. Just like the rest of the shops in Normal, it was cozy and very southern, small-townish. It was shotgun style, with a long counter down one side with the kitchen and working guts behind it, and a row of red, sparkly leather booths along the other side that butted up to a long row of windows. The smell of grease, bacon, beef, and cinnamon filled the air, along with the sounds of chatter and utensils hitting the plates. I looked around, and the only seat not taken was at the counter. It just so happened to be located right in front of a pie stand. I stepped up on the platform where all the single chairs along the counter were bolted down and slid up on the red, sparkly leather, which was the same sparkly leather on the benches. I swiveled the chair seat around with my hands folded on top of the counter. Hiya! Trudy Bull was standing in front of me with an apron tied around her waist, a pen stuck behind her ear. The diner logo, a coffee cup with steam curling out the top, was embroidered on the front. What do you want to eat? She tapped the top of the pie stand with her pen. Or you can go straight for a slice of apple pie. Best around. Now it made sense why Queenie told Trudy people didn't want to smell mildew while she was serving food. First, tell me what's good, I asked, and plucked a menu from between the salt and pepper shakers. Everything? Now, she leaned over and whispered, I wouldn't have said that about 6 months ago, because our head chef wasn't here then. But now? She put her lips together and kissed the tips of her fingers in an Italian sort of way. The new chef makes the grease taste good. I'll have whatever you think is good. I picked up the menu and put it back where I'd found it. What happened 6 months ago? The chef's dad, who was the chef and owner? She flip-flopped her hand. Had a heart attack. Apparently, it was about that guy they found in the lake over at the trailer park. RV park, I corrected her. I live there. It's RVs and campers. She gave me an odd look. I don't think I've ever seen you there.
It's because you haven't, Trudy.
Ty Randall appeared in the window between the diner and the kitchen.
She's the new owner of Happy Trails. Or should I say the owner all along?
Oh! Her lips formed a dramatic O. You mean that you're Mae West? And how did you hear about me? I asked. As far as I know, I'm just the nice lady that helped you figure out the dryers at the laundry club. She smiled, but it quickly faded when Ty hit the dingy bell.
Table 6 up,
he yelled extra loud. The entire diner fell silent. I knew I was going to like you when I heard your name, she winked. One order of campfire hash coming right up. She jerked her head to gesture towards Ty. He's how I know who you are. Trudy moved out of the way, exposing the pass-through window. Ty was still staring at me. He whipped the towel off his shoulder and disappeared, only to reappear through the swinging kitchen door at the far side of the counter. He hurried past the counter and found his way between me and the customer next to me.
Sorry, Dan.
He nudged Dan and took his ticket.
Supper's on me tonight. You've got to move or go, but I need this seat. Here's your hat, and what's your hurry, Ty?
Dan said with some sarcasm as he stood and picked up his bowl of soup.
Why are you here? I told you I'll have your money.
Ty sat down next to me, his knees touching my seat and keeping me from swiveling it away.
There's no need to harass me at work like your ex. I told him, and now I'm going to tell you.
His voice trailed off. He ran his hand down his face before his chest rose in a big inhale. What did you tell my ex? I was curious.
Listen.
He jerked my chair around so I faced him. He got so close to me that I could smell a mix of musk, cologne, and grease. I'm not going to lie, it was a nice smell, and his blue eyes were what I attributed the flip in my stomach to.
I won't have you come in here again, or I'll call Hank Sharp.
Are you telling me that Hank Sharp hasn't come in here to ask you about Paul's death? I wondered, but knew I was putting a little voice in his head.
I'm not telling you anything. I don't know you. I don't need to tell you anything. All you need to know is that I'm going to have your money to you, and I'm looking for a new place for me and the boys.
He planted his hands on the counter.
If you'll excuse me now, he said in a huff, and get out of my diner.
One campfire hash, Trudy started to say, and put down the plate that looked so good, but Ty jerked it out of her hands.
She's leaving,
he told Trudy, and took the plate, disappearing with it back into the kitchen from where he'd come. There was no sense in trying to stay somewhere where I was obviously not welcome. True, I didn't go in there to eat, but to get some information. I wasn't looking forward to a walk back to the campground. It was that weird time of the late afternoon, almost night, where it was still light out until around 9:30 in the evening. Since it was only 6 p.m., the sun was still out, and the only place that looked to be open was the bank. There was no better time to look into a line of credit and come to do what I was going to do with some of the cash from Paul's sock drawer. The bank wasn't exactly what I'd pictured it to be, a regular bank. Nope. Normal trust company had one teller window and one office. There was a small table in the middle where there were some extra deposit and withdrawal slips, like a regular bank would have, but on a very small scale. Is that a real Gucci? The lady behind the only teller desk looked at my purse. She pushed up on her elbows to lean over the counter and get a better look. It is. It was one gift that I'd smuggled out of the pile of items the FBI had seized. My designer bag days were over for now, and I had this one last one to cling to. She gave me the side eye. I've never seen a real one. Only the ones in the magazine down at the Safeway. Safeway? I asked. The grocery store? She straightened her posture and pulled back her shoulders. How can I help you? She looked at her watch. And make it quick, because I've got 3 minutes until 6 according to my watch, and I don't care what I'm in the middle of. It just stops. Is someone here to talk to me about a line of credit? I pointed to the desk. Mr. Dieters! She yelled towards the open bank vault that was next to her desk. Dieters? I questioned. Any relation to Alvin Dieters? I asked.
You can't get any more relation than the real guy.
Alvin walked out of the vault.
Mrs. West, I figured you'd been here earlier, but Ann said I didn't have any visitors other than my wife. She brings me lunch every day at the store so I can come over here in the afternoon to work my banking hours.
I should have known. I brushed my hand through my hair. My fingers got hung in the curls. You are the bank manager?
That's right. And that's why I told you to come to the bank."
He pinched a tight smile and used his pointer finger to push the tip of his cowboy hat up a smidgen.
"But as you can see, it's closing time, and we've only got about 40 seconds to do some business."
"Fine. I'm going to make an anonymous deposit." I dug down into my purse and pulled out a stack of $100 bills. "Anne?" I looked at the nameplate on top of the counter. "Anne Rose. Do you know Dottie Swaggart?" "I do," she said, but her eyes were focused on the hundreds. "Can you please deposit this into her account?" I asked.
"Where'd that money come from?" Alvin demanded to know. "Don't take that if that's blood money."
My cell phone rang. I tried to keep my breathing and hands steady when I saw it was Grady Cox, Paul's longtime friend, and one of the investors on the list that I'd mentioned to Hank. I sent it to voicemail and slipped my phone into my pocket. I'd call him back when I was ready to talk to him. I'm sure he just wanted me to know what he thought of Paul. He wouldn't be the first person to have called me. It's not blood money. I did have a life before I was married, and this is mine. So I might have told a little white lie, but it was for the good of helping someone out. They didn't need to know. I just wanted to do something right. I told you earlier that I was going to make it right with people in Normal. Dottie practically worked for free the past couple of years, and I don't want her to do that anymore now that I'm the new owner.
"I thought you said that you didn't have anything to put down for a line of credit to fix up the park,"
he asked with suspicion in his eyes. "I have a little money that I want to use to help others, but that doesn't concern you. It appears that we only have about 15 seconds. I pushed the hundreds towards Anne. "If you don't mind." Anne slid a look over to Alvin, who gave her a nod. I stood there waiting for the transaction to be completed and took the teller receipt. "Thank you, Anne." I forced a grin and twirled around on my toes as I mentally prepared myself for the walking journey I was about to embark on. Not that I didn't like walking. I did. I didn't like the fact that I didn't have transportation other than the camper. I felt good and happy that I'd given Dottie some money. It definitely wasn't enough, but it was a start. The sun was shining down on my face. I wasn't in my ideal living situation, but I couldn't complain. I had a roof over my head, a few new friends, and food. I wasn't going to let a little thing like not having all the cash I needed to fix up the campground, or the fact that I was going to have to walk miles and miles out of town, get me down. After all, I had a purpose since coming to Normal. I had to fix the campground up and also help get Dottie off the hook. I was careful to hug the pavement at the edge of the road. I'd heard awful tales and seen terrible news reports about people getting hit, and that was something I didn't want to happen to me. So when I heard a car coming, I took a step off the pavement and into the grass to wait for it to pass. Only the car didn't pass. It pulled over. I'd recognize that black car anywhere. Instead of giving Hank Sharp the time, I walked right past him.
"You don't want a ride?" I heard him holler out the window. "I'm going to the campground."
My continued walking apparently didn't give him the hint, because he drove his car slowly next to me, giving me that charming southern smile with the passenger side window rolled down.
"I know you're upset with me."
He appeared to be enjoying this. "What gave you that impression?" I asked.
"I don't know. Maybe you're not stopping when I could give you a ride, or maybe because you didn't answer me. Just a guess, though."
He stopped and put his car in park. When I heard his door shut, I stopped walking and turned around to find him jogging up to me.
"If you aren't going to stop, I'll just come to you."
He picked up the pace when I picked up the pace. "I'm taking a walk." I shrugged and continued to look forward. "You know, exercise."
"Funny, because I hear that you've been snooping around the diner."
He was relentless. "I think it's funny that you feel like you need to keep tabs on me." I stopped and looked at him. "Is that legal?" I pointed to his car. "Because I don't think so, and I can call a citizen's arrest."
"Been watching Andy Griffith?"
He laughed. "Who?" I questioned.
"You don't know what the Andy Griffith Show is?"
His brows furrowed. Listen, I just want to do my walk, so if you don't mind, I turned and started to walk.
I think I've got your husband's killer.
His words brought me to a screeching halt. I turned back around.
I thought that'd get your attention.
This time his smile was like the cat that caught the canary.
Now can I drive you back to the trailer park?
RV park, I corrected him and walked back towards him and then past him. Only because I'm curious.
Curiosity always got the cat.
He laughed, and I could hear his footsteps behind me. You love this little cat and mouse game between us, don't you? I glared at him from the passenger side and over the hood.
Technically, I don't know who killed your husband,
he said once he got into the car.
I just wanted to get you in the car so you don't walk on this road. It can be dangerous.
X! I grabbed the door handle to jump out. His hand was much quicker on the lock. I jerked myself back in the seat.
I'm pretty quick. You should see me draw my gun.
He laughed and put the car in drive. This is kidnapping, I informed him and put the seatbelt on.
No, it's saving your life. People drive on those curvy roads like the Indy 500. You do know what that is, right?
He sped up. Of course I do. I folded my arms. I might be stuck in his car for a few minutes, but I certainly didn't have to talk to him.
I checked out Grady Cox, and I can't seem to find him.
He kept his eyes and hands on the wheel.
I went to his house today. His wife said that she filed a missing persons report. You know when that was?
How would I know? I asked and took out my phone.
Take a guess,
he teased. I don't want to take a guess. I rolled down the window to get a bit of air. The thought that Grady had called me while he was missing made my stomach nauseous.
The same day your husband was killed.
He flipped the blinker on to turn into the campgrounds, and the tick was like a gong in my ear. He called me today. I held my phone out. He didn't leave a message.
When did he call you?
Hank asked and stopped his car in front of Dottie's camper. He called me less than an hour ago. I had gone to the bank to try to get a line of credit to help fix this place up, but didn't realize Alvin Dieters was also the bank manager. I shook my head and started to laugh. I'm beginning to think that luck just isn't with me.
Are you sure he didn't leave a message?
He asked. Here, I held it out to him again. Look for yourself.
He's not been at home, according to his wife. She did file a report because I went over to their police department.
He turned the car off, and the door locks popped up. Maybe she's lying, and he killed Paul. She knew it and filed a report to show that he was missing when she knew he isn't. I thought it sounded good, but then he blew it out of the water.
Why would she do that if he was guilty? Wouldn't he just stay and act as if nothing happened, and not have her file a report that would bring attention to him?
He did that smile thing.
Leave the detective work to me, and I'll leave picking up all those weeds around the lake up to you.
Funny, I said with a sarcastic tone.
I hear that you and Dottie have become friends since you've been here.
His southern tone was velvet, yet edged with steel. She's been very kind and helpful, I shrugged. Is that against the law around here?
No, but she was seen with Paul the afternoon before he floated up to the top of the lake. The two of you in cahoots? You might not have been in town, but she sure was. And the gun we found in the Happy Trails Lake was registered to Dottie.
Really? Hearing this sent a shock of icy fear through me. I'd generally been a good judge of character in the past, and I thought Paul had just been that good at fooling me. But apparently my instincts about people were off, way off.
Oh, that's good.
He wagged his finger at me.
Great poker face.
She told me she hadn't seen him in forever. I gulped and wondered if that old saying about keeping your enemies closer was what she was doing with me. The fact was that I didn't know her, and it would be easy for her to cover up anything. All these people drip with southern charm, which makes it hard to distinguish anything real. And no, We weren't in cahoots. Are you sure it wasn't just gossip? Because a lot of that goes on around here.
They were caught on video of the bank. I'm going to have her bank records subpoenaed to see if there are any weird transactions on her account.
His words alarmed me. I just put money in her account without her knowing. Nervously, I ran my hands through my hair. I was just...
Why? How much?
His brows formed a V as he stared at me. Just 1,000 to help her get by. She told me that Paul hadn't paid her well, and any money she did have, she used to pay off some of the lot fees that the campers owed. I only wanted to help her. My voice trailed off.
You had $1,000 to give away, Mae West?
His jaw softened. He shot me a twisted smile.
I thought you were broke. How much more money do you have?
I don't have much. I'm not a suspect, so it's none of your business. My voice was rough with anxiety. Now he was making me think Dottie Swaggart did have something to do with Paul's murder.
Now that you told me that, it's possible you knew Dottie before this little act you've put on here. After all,
his tone hardened ruthlessly.
You are an actress, right, Mae West?
Whatever, I said sarcastically and jerked the car door open.
What are you two doing?
Dottie asked after both of us had gotten out of the car.
I've come to get an official statement from you, or if you want to come to the station, I can take you down and bring you back.
He tapped the top of the car with his hand.
Nope, I've got nothing to hide. You're more than welcome to come in, and I'll answer anything you want to know.
Dottie waved him in. It was my cue to go. The weeds that I'd not noticed before he pointed them out were worse than I thought. After I'd gotten my file and purse into the camper, I threw on a pair of shorts and t-shirt. There was no time like the present to pick those weeds because I wasn't getting any sort of loan to help me hire anyone. I needed the exercise, and to get what Hank had told me about Dottie and Paul on that tape out of my head for the time being. Maybe all the talk about exercise being good for stress was something I needed to explore. I was stressed out, to say the least. The lake was still green and murky. I reminded myself to take on one project at a time. The weeds had to be pulled in order for people to stand around the lake. That was where I was going to start. About 15 minutes into the tedious task, a few more of the campers had come outside and began to pick weeds with me. Before I knew it, the entire campground, minus Dottie Swaggart, was around the lake helping me pull up the weeds.
See what a little teamwork can do?
Henry said with a big black bag filled with weeds in his hands. Both of us stood there looking over the lake at the campers. They were all talking and laughing, getting ready for the nightly supper. I'd never lived in a community where everyone took care of each other. My eyes welled with tears as the joy of kindness flittered inside of my heart. There was no amount of money or the big mansion I had once had that would make me want to go back to the life I'd been living.
Are you okay?
Henry asked. I'm fine, more than fine. I thought I was living the life I wanted. I gulped. I was so wrong.
Normal ain't much, but we do have some good folks around these parts.
Henry shook his head and left me with my feelings. Normal will be much. I tugged my shoulders back. If a little bit of weeding made the place look this much better, I could only imagine what a little more elbow grease would do. I promise you that, I whispered to myself. That night, I sat down at the table with a small plate of food from all the fire pits that had gathered around the lake and started to make a list about the murder in my RV files. There were some murmurs about Paul's death and even a rumor or two about the national news coming to town for some sort of press conference the next day. Dottie and Henry had both been victims of Paul's. According to Dottie, Hank said that the FBI thought that someone in the park knew he was there. I wrote their names on a piece of paper, as well as Ty Randall's. Under Dottie's name, I wrote motive and started to make a list under it. She invested and lost her savings to Paul's scheme. She felt sorry for Paul initially. She wasn't getting paid. She was paying lot fees for the campers and got angry when she realized she wasn't going to get that money or her investment back. When Paul showed up, I hesitated because I was stumped to why they'd been seen in town together. That was something I was going to have to explore further, but for now, I finished my list. She got angry and shot him. Then I wrote down that I needed to know if she had a gun or a license to have one. The only way I knew to do that was to snoop in her camper. When was that going to happen? She was always outside smoking and watching everyone. I moved on to Henry. His motive was that Paul had stolen his $2,000. Henry didn't seem like the killing type. He was helpful and kind, but he remained on the list. Then there was Ty. To me, he seemed to have the biggest motive. I began to wonder where he'd moved back from. According to the local gossip, he had a career and life outside of normal. It was Paul's fault that the family diner was going to go under, and he blamed Paul for his father's heart attack. I quickly wrote those things down because those were major life-altering things that could make Ty go over the edge. I saw how he reacted when I came into the diner, and I hadn't done a thing to him. I can only imagine what happened when he saw Paul. I snapped my fingers. "That's it," I quickly wrote. "The diner is across from the bank. He saw Paul talking to Dottie. He followed Paul, or maybe even talked to Paul. Either way, somehow he got Paul back to the campground and shot him." So all of this was speculation. I knew that I had to get into Dottie's and Ty's campers to look for clues. That's how they did it in the movies. I wouldn't be considered a burglar since I owned the lots their campers sat on, would I? Nah. I talked myself into it and sat back in the kitchen chair to get a look at Dottie's camper. This looks like a good start. I stretched my arms over my head with a big yawn. 11. The next morning, the buzz of a lawnmower woke me earlier than I'd planned. When I pulled back the kitchen window curtain, I saw 3 people on mowers. One was Henry, another was Dottie, but I didn't recognize the last one. While I got ready, I flipped on my Keurig so I could have a nice cup of coffee while I walked over to see who else I needed to thank. I also made a few more cups of coffee, put it in a thermos, and grabbed a couple of styrofoam cups. The little bit of weeding that had been done around the lake made the campground much tidier and inviting. It was all coming together. The sun's morning rays trickled down into the lake, highlighting the murky green slush. No matter how much we cut the grass, that slush wasn't going to go away on its own. I had to remind myself that I was doing one thing at a time, and eventually I'd get it back in tip-top shape. "What little grass we got sure does look better." Dottie had stopped the lawnmower when she saw me coming. "Here, it's still really early." I gave her a cup and unscrewed the thermos lid, filling it up with coffee. "What did Detective Sharp want yesterday?" I asked. "Nothing." She didn't make eye contact, and that was all she had to say before Henry drove the lawnmower over to us. Her lack of words made me even more suspicious. "Say, some of the campers dropped their money off. I've got it in my camper, and I'll get it to you." "I'm going back to the library to look some stuff up. Abby didn't need help today, but I'll be there for a while if you come looking for me." I shielded the sun with my hand over my eyes when I heard the lawnmowers coming closer. Imagine my surprise when I recognized the third person after they drove their lawnmower over. "Alvin Dieters." I greeted him with a cup of coffee. "Your face isn't the first thing I thought I'd see this morning."
"What a fine face it is, too," Henry said.
He called me bright and early, saying that he had some free time before he had to open the feeding seed, and wondered if we'd like a hand at mowing before he donates the sod and helps clean up the lake with a fountain irrigation system.
I would have only brought 2 lawnmowers if I'd known we were mowing more dirt than grass."
He nodded. There was an understanding that had occurred between us, sort of a respect.
"I told Henry that we just did a big job on a house, and they had some extra sod left over. I spoke to the owners last night about what Preacher Hager told me, about you revitalizing the community and all. They were more than happy to donate. When I got here, I noticed how bad the lake was, and I don't mind helping out with some donations, and a fountain to put in the middle to help clean up the lake."
Dottie had finished up her coffee and had hopped back on the lawnmower, and Henry took his coffee with him to finish mowing. "Thank you." That was the only thing I could think of because I was so shocked at the turn of events. "So I should thank Preacher Hager, too?"
"He was the one who tipped the scale," he said. "What you did for Dottie and the money you had put into her account was what got me to rethinking."
"It was nothing." I shook my head. "Mr. Dieters." I held the thermos up as a gesture to refill his cup, and he agreed. "The Paul West that did all the awful things wasn't the man I knew. I'm not saying that he didn't deserve to go to jail, but I'm not so sure I can say he deserved to die."
"Now, wait a minute." He held his hand up. "Paul West was a bad man that ruined a lot of lives."
"Yes, that's no excuse. But what I'm going to say might put a bad taste in your mouth about me again. But there's someone out there that killed him, and I've been working with Hank to give the best account I can of people who might have enjoyed seeing Paul die." I stretched the truth about helping Hank, but that didn't seem to matter around here. "And I was wondering if you'd seen Paul around here after he escaped, and who he might have been with?"
"Nope, can't say I did."
He shook his head. "Did you watch the security footage from the bank with Hank?" I asked.
"No."
He was not a man of many words. "Do you have the footage, or did they take it?" I asked.
"I have it still, but they took a copy."
His eyes lowered.
"Why?"
"Well, I was wondering if I could take a look at it." I waited with anticipation. "I can't say just yet, but Hank has suspects on his list that just couldn't have killed Paul."
"Ask him for the footage, then. I told you he had a copy."
He took the last drink of his coffee and handed me back the cup.
"I told Ann I'd be here all afternoon, and Hank was going to stop by and pick up another copy from months prior. You can go when he does, and I'd be fine with that."
"Perfect." I pinched a smile and knew that I had to get to the bank before Hank did. I'd seen him bribe children, and I wonder if I could bribe an adult. Anne, to be specific. "Thanks again for helping with all this. I truly do appreciate it." Dottie had gone beyond the lake and started to go between the lots. She'd made her way over to the far road of the campground, which was out of sight. It was perfect timing for me to go search her camper. As the manager, of course. When I opened the door to Dottie's camper, I glanced around to make sure no one saw me. The coast appeared to be clear, so I quickly jogged up the 3 steel steps and closed the door behind me. Dottie's camper was much different than mine. I had the separate rooms, while she had one big open space. In the back of the RV, she had a full table that folded away and a Murphy bed. In the middle of the camper was her kitchen, and up towards the front, she had a full couch and lazy boy. The entire place had the stale smell of smoke, and there were ashtrays all over the place that needed to be emptied. Her TV was on, and so was the ceiling fan, making the smell of the smoke even more nauseating. There was a filing cabinet next to the kitchen table that had the letters of the alphabet printed on the drawer labels. I opened the top drawer and found files of rental agreements. I pulled out a couple and noticed some of them were dated so far back that they probably could have been thrown away. Dottie had a system, and I wasn't interested in learning it that day. I was interested in finding out if she had a gun, or if Hank had told me that to see if he could call a bluff. The bottom metal drawer of the filing cabinet was labeled personal. The wheels on the drawer screeched when I opened it.
"Mae, what are you doing?"
Dottie surprised me. I was, looking for the money you took in. I had to think fast on my feet.
It certainly isn't in my personal files.
She walked back, wiping the sweat from her brow with the collar of her shirt.
And I don't think I gave you permission to come in here.
You know, I was thinking about that. I tried to play it off. You know that outbuilding near the lake? I wonder if we can make that an office instead of using your camper. I was even impressed with what I just pulled out of my sleeve. If we can get the lake and everything cleaned up, we might be able to have a tackle shop or even a snack stand in there. I shrugged at my great idea.
Then that means you might have a job for me?
The shifting of her eyes between me and the personal file didn't go unnoticed. Why wouldn't I? I found that to be an odd question.
Hank Sharp told me last night that he wondered if you were going to carry out your husband's wishes about getting rid of me.
There was a sadness that crossed her face. Dottie, I think we need to sit down. I pointed towards one of the kitchen chairs. Because I think Hank is putting us against each other, or at least trying to figure out if we're in cahoots. Trust me that I know it's not been easy for you. I'd been gone for 12 years, and somehow my accent started to pick right back up, though I tried so hard to lose the twang. The real reason I'm in here is because even though you've been the nicest person to me, he's made me doubt you and your motives.
He did the same about you to me. He even told me that you were from Kentucky.
Her jaw dropped.
That little...
I am from Kentucky, but the western part of the state. I made it sound like no big deal. What if you and I put our heads together and figure out just what Hank wants from us? I suggested.
He wants a confession that either I killed Paul or that you and I killed Paul.
Her brows shot up.
The gun that shot your husband was my gun.
I interrupted her. Ex. I was just about tired of people calling him my husband. Ever since he was arrested, I never wanted to call him my husband, and had immediately proceeded with divorce papers. He wasn't the man I thought I'd married, and he certainly didn't love me, since he forged my signature on all of those documents.
Still, it was my gun. I'm not even sure when it went missing.
Her voice trailed off, and her eyes looked at the filing cabinet.
You were in here trying to figure out if I had a gun, weren't you?
Yes, I told you that Hank had me rethink how nice you'd been, but I don't think you killed Paul. I bit the corner of my lip, thinking about Henry and Ty. Though it does look bad that it was your gun.
And...
She took a cigarette out of the pouch and tucked it into the corner of her lip.
Paul had come to town the day he escaped from jail. He gave me the sob story about how he needed money because he was going to prove that he didn't take everyone's money that his partner had.
He didn't have a partner. I couldn't believe how he lied, even when he escaped. How did he get out of jail?
That's a good question. He skipped around it, and when he refused to answer my questions, I told him I wasn't going to even think about giving him money. There was something that didn't sit well right here.
She pointed to her stomach.
That's when I called the police to let them know that he was in town. Then you showed up the next day.
That's why they think I did it, and realized I wasn't here when they pinged my cell phone location. I sighed. And now he has you on footage with Paul, plus the gun.
It doesn't look good. I never go anywhere but the laundry club and here. I don't have an alibi with witnesses. I was here watching The Real Housewives. I can tell them everything that happened and who got into fights on that episode, but that's not good enough.
Her determination faltered. I'm no detective, but I've been in many circles of women who like to backstab each other. I can read people really good. My confidence was starting to come back about my intuition. I want you to look into Henry and what he was doing that night. He's a suspect, too, since Paul had taken him for all his money.
I can do that.
"What are you going to do?" she questioned. "I'm going to go to the bank and see if I can talk Anne into letting me see the footage of you talking to Paul. Someone else had to know he was in town, and if there's anything on there, even the slightest thing, we might have something." I stood up and looked out her window when I heard gravel spitting up underneath some tires. It was Bets Hager in her minivan, ready to pick me up to take me to town. "I can't promise anything, but I'm going to try," I said. "I'll be back this afternoon, and think about the office thing. That I'm serious about."
"Thanks, Mae."
Dottie reached for her lighter on my way out the door. 12. "A car?" Bets questioned. "Yeah, I don't need something big. I just need a little something to get me back and forth into town and around the campground." I'd asked her if she knew anyone with a used car lot around town. "That way you don't have to keep picking me up. By the way, I want to thank you for sending Lester over to see Alvin." "It was nothing." She scrunched her nose and pulled in front of the library. "Sometimes it's good to use the big guy above, when it's for the good of the people." "Let me know if I can repay the favor. I know I don't have much." I gathered my beloved Gucci bag and another not-so-fancy backpack that I'd found from the previous owners of the camper that I dumped my purse contents into it. "You can show up to church this Sunday. That's me calling in my favor." She was relentless. "Are you on a mission to save every soul in Normal?" I joked. "If I can," she winked. "I'll see what I can find out about a car. And don't forget book club later," she reminded me. "I won't," I lied. I'd totally forgotten about it, but now I wouldn't. "Thanks for bringing the fundraiser items over this morning, too." "No problem. Do you know when you're going to make the official date for it?" She asked a really good question. "Now that Alvin is cleaning up the lake and giving me the sod, I think we can do it in a couple of days. I'm going to ask Abby to keep getting the word out through her social media marketing with all those hashtags." I started to laugh. She said that she's been getting a great response, and there's a small window between now and the start of the camping season. She's so nice. "Everyone here is nice." Bets turned in her seat. "Say," she grabbed her cell phone from the cup holder, "I think the church has a car that you can borrow until you get your own car." "Really? That would solve a lot of my issues." "Yeah," she nodded with a sparkle in her eyes. "We have a donation program. When someone donates a car, they get to write it off of their taxes when Joel Grassel from the gas station looks them over and fixes them up for us." "Do you really think I could use it?" I asked. "It'd be such a big help." "I'll call Lester and let you know." She reached over and grabbed my hand, giving it a squeeze. "Just another good deed from our church." "I hear ya," I winked. "I know, front row on Sunday." I waved goodbye to her, and when she was out of eyesight, I didn't go to the library. I wanted to see Anne before Alvin had decided there wasn't much more to mow and go into work. The bank was empty except for Anne. "Mae West," she greeted me and slid off the stool next to the drive-through window. "I'm not sure what you've got over Preacher and Mrs. Hager, but they sure have taken a liking to you." "What, you don't like my charm?" I joked. "I didn't tell no one about the money you put in Dottie's account." There was something to her words that made me think she was prying a little. "I appreciate that." I rubbed the outside of the Gucci to touch it one last time, to burn it into my memory. I nearly teared up just thinking about what I was about to do. "Mr. Dieters isn't here if you're looking for him." Her eyes drew down to my hand that was gripped around my purse. "I'm not here to see Mr. Dieters. He's at the campground right now." I spoke softly and looked around to make sure we were still alone. I put the Gucci on the counter in front of me. "Anne, have you ever seen the inside of a real Gucci?" "I'd never seen a real one until you walked in yesterday." She licked her lips. "Detective Sharp and I were talking on the way back to the campground yesterday." I tilted my head side to side a few times in a jovial way. I'm helping him with the investigation, since I know a lot of the people Paul swindled. He said that the security footage showed Dottie Swaggart and Paul meeting the day someone killed him. When he got the copy back to the station, he said that it didn't copy all of it, and he sent me here to get another copy for him. He did? She gazed at me with questioning eyes. That seems odd that he'd ask for your help, since you're not a police officer or detective. I pushed the Gucci a little closer to her and opened it up. She leaned in a smidgen and looked inside. Her big gulp told me that I almost had her on the hook. I'm willing to part with the Gucci if you're willing to give me a copy of the tape. I stared at her. Are you joking? She asked. I couldn't tell if she was happy or just shocked I'd even consider a bribe. I never joke about Gucci. I let the silence between us speak for itself. Without a word or even a facial movement, Anne got up and walked back into the vault. I heard some shuffling and clicking, praying it wasn't her calling the police, or, even worse, Hank. The door of the bank opened, and someone walked in, stopping at the counter in the middle with the extra deposit slips. Mrs. West? Anne's eyes glanced past my shoulders, and she looked at the customer. Here's the contents of your safety deposit box. She laid a CD file on the counter and grabbed the Gucci. Thank you so much. I just love this bank. I smiled and looked behind me when the customer walked up and waited at the sign that said to wait there until the teller called them. The pleasure is all mine. She smiled. I took the CD and headed out the door, walking towards the library. Today, the library was nice and quiet. Story time was only once a week, and there weren't a lot of kids running around like yesterday. Abby was putting back books in the mystery department when I found her. What are you doing here today? She picked up a book and looked at the spine. I need to use a computer with a CD drive. I showed her the disc. Go on behind my desk and use that one. It's the newest. She shoved the book on the shelf. Let me know if you need help. Thanks. I left her to finish the cart, grateful she was letting me do it myself, so I didn't have to explain what I was doing. The news popped up on the computer when I moved the mouse. There was a big picture of Paul as the main news story. Normally, I'd just not read it or even watch it if it were on TV, but Grady Cox's name caught my eye. I scanned down the article and read about Grady being a suspect since he'd gone missing the day of Paul's murder. They even had a photo of Ava Cox, Grady's wife, and Grady Jr., their son. I'd only met Ava, Grady, and Grady Jr. once, 2 years ago when Paul and I got married. They traveled from Kentucky to our house in the Hamptons. My heart sank as I looked at their family photo. Just another casualty in Paul's scheme. I hit the print button. I had a deep need to go see Ava and apologize. According to the Google map, they lived only 40 minutes from normal, which also made Grady a suspect. The article said that detectives believe Paul might have come to Kentucky to meet up with his best friend, but the best friend wasn't so forgiving. The article still didn't say what the FBI thought about the escape. Somehow, that played a part. But who helped Paul? Out of curiosity, I Googled the penitentiary where Paul escaped. There was a list of employees that I printed off. Just to make sure, I'd take the list and compare it to the list Hank had given me of Paul's victims. Maybe someone in there knew him and let him out. Even people from outside groups that came in were a possibility. Most of them were church groups that tried to turn the prisoners to God. I'd ask Bets about these groups and see if she knew anything about them. Instead of wasting more time on Paul, I needed to see about Dottie. The computer buzzed after I put the CD in the slot and shut it. A window popped open with a movie link, and I clicked it. The scene was the outside of the building. I scrolled over most of it until it showed 2 people in front of the bank. They looked as though they were debating something. I put my finger on the small figure that was Paul. I could pick him out from anywhere. He was so debonair and mature. Even a little scruffy, he was still handsome. For a second, I let my heart go back to the Paul I'd been married to, not the criminal. I shook my head to bring me back to the reason I was in normal. It wasn't him and Dottie I was focusing on. That was what Hank was doing. I was interested in the surroundings. I took the backpack off my back and took out my file, writing down everything I could see outside of the two of them. There was a clear view of Normal Diner. I wrote down Trudy's name and wondered if she could tell if any people who lost their money to Paul had been in the diner that night. Or maybe Ty Randall had seen Paul, and my theory about luring him back to the campground was right. I sat and watched until Dottie and Paul parted ways. 13.
"Say,"
said a man sitting in a Ford Escort parked at the curb in front of the bank. He leaned across the front seat of the car and shouted out the passenger window,
"Are you Mae West?"
He wore a pair of bib overalls with a greasy handkerchief hanging out of the front pocket. He had a buzz cut. The lines around his eyes deepened as he squinted away the sun. "Yes, I'm Mae." Cautiously, I walked up to the car window with a sudden fear that this was someone Paul had wronged and they were going to shoot me or something.
"I'm Joel from Grassel's gas station down there."
He pointed towards the gas station with the high prices.
"I got a call from Preacher Lester saying that I needed to bring you this car from the church."
I put my hand to my chest as a sigh of relief escaped me. Yes, wow, that was fast. I bent down and looked into the four-door. It looked like it was in great shape and perfect for what I needed.
"Here you go."
He turned the car off and got out.
"I can walk back down to the station. You do have a valid driver's license, right?"
"Yes, of course." I nodded and took the key. "Thank you so much."
"No problem. Though Preacher Lester did have something he wanted me to tell you. He said he was looking forward to meeting you on Sunday."
His mouth opened into a big, wide grin before he started walking down Main Street towards his gas station. "Did he now?" I shook my head. "Even the church isn't above bribing," I whispered, and looked back at the bank where I could just imagine what Anne was doing with my Gucci. I squeezed the keys in my palm and looked between the library and the car. I was going to do a little more research on the list of prison employee names that I'd printed off yesterday, but my curiosity about Ava Cox and where Grady had disappeared to was giving me the itch to find out if Paul's college best friend had anything to do with Paul's demise. Thank goodness for cell phones and GPS. I put the town name in my Maps app, and instantly the directions popped up, letting me know it would take me 40 minutes to get there. There was a tug of war in my head. Part of me wanted to go see Ava and Grady Jr. The other part of me wanted to work on a marketing plan to get people to the fundraiser. Abby was so savvy at this online marketing thing, and I truly wanted to have her teach me and make a go of this. In the afternoon, I'd planned to go back to the campground and help Henry clean up, get my clothes out of the storage, and start planning where the decorations were going to go. Unlike the last few years of my life, I put the needs of me and the campground aside and found myself looking between the road and the GPS on my way to see Ava, or at least on my way to see if I could find Ava. The whole way there, I talked to myself like Ava was in the car with me, anticipating her answers. Imaginary Ava told me everything I wanted to hear and how she was shocked that Paul scammed them, too. But with Grady missing, I wasn't sure that was the case. My heart wanted to believe that Grady, since he'd been best friends with Paul, was also part of the scheme, even though Paul swore it was all him. Ava and I'd only met the one time, and I wasn't sure if she would talk to me. Not only did Paul ruin their lives, apparently it sent Grady off, but to where? There were so many questions I wanted to ask her. Not only questions about the scheme and Grady's investment, but their history with Paul. There was a small diner on the outskirts of town that flashed a sign claiming to be the best barbecue joint in Kentucky. In fact, it was named Barbecue Joint. It wasn't the sign that made me whip in, rather the old phone booth with the dangling phone book that made me jerk the wheel of the Ford and park it in a spot that was on the end of a full parking lot. The barbecue diner almost looked like a fancy camper that was parked in front of a small motel. You know those two-level mom-and-pop motels that have a pool in the front with a chain-length fence around it? That type of motel. The barbecue diner was a shiny silver with a big red stripe around the middle that clashed with the baby blue doors on the motel rooms. But I wasn't there to judge. I was there to look up Ava Cox in the phone book. The old phone booth door creaked when I slid it shut. There had to be a vent from the restaurant into the booth because the smell of pork, cinnamon, sugar, and tangy sauce swept underneath my nose as I brought the phone book up to rest on the small metal shelf while I shuffled through it. My stomach growled. My finger was scanning the pages, but my mind was on the barbecue. I checked my phone and noticed it was already lunchtime, and I should have known since the parking lot was full. There wasn't a Grady or Ava Cox in the phone book. When I'd Googled them on my phone, I couldn't find them. By the looks of the internet search I'd done at the library, Lexington was bigger than normal, and it might be harder to find them. It dawned on me that while I was here, I might as well go on into the diner, eat lunch, and ask around if anyone knew Ava or Grady. It was a perfect plan. I slid the phone booth door back open and headed inside the restaurant. All the tables in the middle of the floor were full, but there was an empty stool at the counter. It was like it was meant for me. The typical diner noises of chatter, clinking dishes, and the ding of the cash register were somewhat comforting to me. That small-town America that I'd heard so much about was real. I sat down on the stool and looked around for a menu. "Good afternoon." A young man with a baseball cap walked over with a small plastic glass with water and a few floating ice chips. He set it in front of me. The barbecue joint's smiling pig face logo was embroidered on the bill of the hat. "What can I get you while you look over the menu?" He pulled a menu from behind the counter and laid it in front of me. "Here's the lunch specials." He flipped the menu over from the breakfast side. His blue eyes were magnified behind his glasses. "I'll have a Diet Coke." I was happy to see that they had Coke products. My eyes looked down the menu. It all looked good and made my stomach rumble. "One Diet Coke coming up," he wrote on his ordering pad. When he walked off, I noticed he swiped a coffee pot and refilled all the customers' cups on the counter as he made his way down to the soda fountain. There was hardly a second for me to look back down until he was back with the drink and a straw. "Decide yet?" he asked and pushed up the bill of his hat, swiping the sweat with the sleeve of his shirt. His brown hair was matted to his forehead. I hesitated. "First-timer?" he offered a smile. "Yes. In fact, I was driving by because I'm coming to town to look for a dear friend that I've not seen since my wedding." I wondered if he knew Grady Cox, Jr. "What's good here?" "Barbecue?" His brows drew together. "Who are you looking for?" "Ava and Grady Cox," I said, and took a quick glance at the menu. "I'll have the barbecue chicken sandwich and fries." "Are you some reporter or something?" he asked and didn't write down my order. "No," I shook my head. "Nothing like that. Truly, Ava and I are friends." "I don't think so." He leaned in. "Listen, lady, if you think you can come here and try to pretend to be my mom's friend to get a scoop, you can just walk right on out of here, or I can toss you out." Grady Jr.? I just couldn't believe my luck. Maybe things were changing for me. "I'm Mae West. You came to my wedding a couple of years ago." "Don't you think you've done enough damage to my family?" His jaw tensed. "Is everything okay here, Grady?" An older waitress walked over and put her arm on his. "It's fine, but I can't take her order." He continued to glare at me. "You can, but I won't." I watched him storm off and walk around a corner, disappearing. "I'm not sure what that was about, but what can I get you to eat?" she asked. "I'll have the barbecue chicken sandwich platter." I drew my eyes back to her and wondered if I should even stay here at all. It was my chance, the chance I needed to see what Ava knew. My stomach won out, and my desire to see if Grady Jr. would talk to me. He had to come out of hiding if he was working. It wasn't long until my food was sitting in front of me. I couldn't say for sure if it was the best barbecue in the state, because I'd not tried any other barbecue in my short stay, but it was delicious and something I'd go back for. "Junior, can you fix the cash register?" The yell made me look up from the last bite I had left. Another waitress was standing in front of the register, poking all sorts of the buttons, before Grady Jr. popped his head from around the corner he'd disappeared to. He looked at me, grumbled something under his breath, and walked around to help her. I watched him check some cords and cables before the beeps of the old register came back to life. My waitress had stuck my paper bill under the water glass. I pulled the cash and the tip from my purse, sticking it too under the glass. "You're the best." She patted him with a big smile on her face. "Grady," I called over loud enough for him to hear me, but quiet enough not to draw attention. He gave me one last stare before he disappeared again. If I was going to find Ava, it was going to be on my own, with no help from Grady. I gave the inside of the diner another good once-over to see if he was anywhere near, but there wasn't any sign of him. The best I could figure was that he'd had one of the many waitresses who kept looking my way, giving him the 411 on my still being there. I didn't want to make his life any more complicated than Paul had made it, so I decided to count talking to him as a loss and get out of there. I could tell Detective Hank what I was up to, and maybe he'd be able to get some information from the kid, if he'd not already been here. I checked the time and noticed there was still plenty of time to go into town and ask around, or even find a library with some deeds or something, anything to find out where they lived. The sun was well past high noon, but the warmth of the rays felt good. I stopped next to the Ford and leaned against it, closing my eyes and lifting my chin to the sun. Hopefully, I could see Ava before I left town and still have plenty of time to drive back to Happy Trails to get some things done around the lake. I was one step closer to basking in the sun for some much-needed R&R.
"Exactly what do you want to accomplish by talking to my mama?"
Grady Jr.'s voice came from the side of the building. He was leaning against the wall with one foot holding him up and the other one flat against the wall. "Not that it should be a big secret, but I know that your dad and my ex had been friends a long time. If you've even kept up with the papers or the news, you know that I had no idea Paul was doing this to me, your parents, or anyone else." I took a couple of steps closer to him. "I'm trying to move on with my life, and now that he's dead, I'm trying to make good with some of the people he stole money from."
"Let the FBI do that. From what they told my mama, she might not get all the money back, but she might get some after all the assets have been taken."
There was some hope in his voice that I hated to squash. "All the assets have been taken and divided up." By the look on his face, my words didn't make matters better. "And I also understand that your dad has been missing since Paul turned up dead."
"Are you saying my dad killed Paul? Because if he did, he'd be the hero in this whole situation."
Grady seemed to be taking up for his dad, which was expected. "I'm not saying that. I am saying that a few people who I've gotten to know pretty well the past couple of days, and who were also victims of Paul's Ponzi scheme, are suspects in his murder. I know they didn't do it, and I'd like to talk to your mom about the days leading up to your dad's disappearance." I decided being truthful might get me some brownie points. "I'm just being honest about why I'm here, nothing more." He looked the opposite way and was quiet for what seemed like minutes, but was in reality only a few seconds. He shoved off the wall and stood straight up.
"Fine, I'm off now, no thanks to you."
He spit on the ground.
"You can follow me. I'll take you to our house."
"Thank you, Grady Jr." I smiled. "It'll be good closure for you, too."
"You can call me Junior, and I hope this is the end, because your husband really did a number on our family," he muttered over his shoulder as he walked up to a beat-up, two-toned car that was so used I couldn't even tell the make or model. But I sure did notice the paper tag on the back that meant it was new to him. Just another reminder of how Paul had changed many lives, and this young boy was no different. 14. Paul wasn't joking when he'd tell me stories about the Cox house. Whenever Paul told a tale about people who had a lot more money than we did, I thought maybe he was stretching the truth a little to be more humble himself, but this was not the case. The sprawling acres of the greenest grass, black Kentucky fence posts, and grazing horses were just the front of the property after I'd driven through the gate where Junior had punched in a code. There were people on mowers, tractors, and all sorts of equipment I didn't recognize. In the distance, I could see what appeared to be a racetrack, with men riding several large brown horses. Some were trotting, while others were galloping full speed. It was a working racehorse farm, just like Paul had said. It was probably the only thing he was truthful about in our marriage. The barns were luxurious on the outside and looked exactly like the house we'd pulled up in front of, minus the grand marble staircase leading up to the double front doors. "This is where you live?" I gawked after we'd parked and I'd gotten out. "For one more week," his voice cracked. "We can't afford it now." He took his cap off his head and ran his hand through his hair. "No thanks to Paul West." "Where will you go?" I asked. "Honey, can you come in and give me a hand with the boxes from your bedroom? The movers will be here in a minute." Ava Cox stood at the front door in a pair of leggings and a red baggy top that hung off her right shoulder. Her long black and curly hair was pulled to the side over her left shoulder. Her olive skin was just as beautiful as I'd remembered it, though the brown circles under her eyes told me it had been a long few months. It was funny, the weird stuff you remember about people, and I remember Paul telling me that I'd love Ava because she was younger than Grady. "Hi." She trotted down the steps like one of her fine horses. "You must be with Brighton Interiors." She outstretched her hand. "Thank you for taking the time to come look at the paintings." "Mom," Junior tried to stop her. "I'm sure you'll find they're in mint condition and rare." She was selling to me, even though I couldn't afford the gas to get them back to normal. "Mom," Junior stopped her again. "This isn't the lady from the interior place. It's Mae West, Paul's wife. Ex." I was really getting tired of correcting people. Maybe I needed a sign to pin on me, or one of those fancy necklaces that women wore with their name, but mine would say, Paul's ex-wife. "What do you want?" The sweet southern hospitality I'd received when she thought I was the interior chick had completely left every bone in her body. "Why did you bring her here?" she demanded of Junior. "Ava," I gulped because the look she gave me when I used her name was one that told me I'd almost crossed the line. "If I may call you Ava," I said, again, relieved not to be smacked by her. "I came to town to actually talk to you, scorned woman to scorned woman." "My husband didn't scorn me," she was quick to retort. "No, but my husband did both of us wrong, and I'm trying to make things right," I said. "Then I'll take $14 million in cash." She nodded, and when I didn't say anything, she said, "I didn't think so. Get her out of here before I call the police." She turned and walked back up the stairs. "Please, just a minute of your time, and I'll leave forever. Please," I begged. "Mom, just hear what she has to say. If you don't, then we can't move on from all the thoughts and questions in our head." Junior walked sideways next to her, almost tripping on the top step. "You said that if she were ever in front of you, you'd let her have it." My eyes grew big. "Now's your chance. That's why I brought her here." He jumped in front of the double doors to block them. "Let her have it." He socked one fisted hand in his palm. "Fine," she said, pushing Junior aside and going into the house. "Come on," he gestured to me.
She's not going to really let me have it, is she? I asked slowly, walking up the steps.
No,
he actually smiled.
Though it'd be funny.
Junior was actually starting to grow on me. I remember I'd found him in our pool house at the party after our wedding reception with some booze he took from the bar. He was clearly underage. He begged me not to tell his parents. Luckily, I'd gotten there before he did too much damage, and I kept his secret, taking the rest of the booze with me. Remember? I found you? I kept that secret, I reminded him.
Yeah, that's why I brought you. You're not so bad. Maybe bad taste in men, but not a bad person.
His jaw finally softened, as well as his eyes, uncovering the deep hurt that was so clear in them now. I am sorry. I wanted him to know that.
I know.
His voice cracked, and he cleared his throat.
The kitchen is that way, and if I know my mom, she's about to defrost one of those fancy coffee cakes that she keeps in the freezer for just-in-case company.
I could use some of that right now. I patted his arm and walked back to where he'd pointed. I didn't want to comment on how amazing her home was, because I knew it was no longer her home, but the FBI's. I'm sorry. I looked around the custom kitchen. It had all the bells and whistles no one ever needed. I could relate. Marble countertops, designer cabinets, buttons that made things come out of the counter and hide back down. I looked around at the walk-in butler pantry with all the KitchenAid appliances, along with all the spices and ingredients. Even the lighting was fit for a palace, with all the crystals, or maybe they were diamonds. A large wall of glass looked out over the horse farm they were about to lose. I just went through this. I want to tell you I'm sorry, but I'm not there yet. She took a plate of the fancy coffee cake out of the microwave and placed it on the island. But I'm a Southern lady, and I can swallow my pride to have a few of my questions answered. I wish I could offer you a seat, but they've been taken, along with the rest of my furniture. I'm fine. The pastry did make my mouth water. How did you not know your husband was doing this? She wasted no time with pleasantries. He went to work, came home at decent hours. There were never any luxury gifts or vacations. I reached for a slice and put it on a napkin she'd practically thrown at me. Under her tough exterior, I knew there was a lot of hurt inside. I went to play tennis, had a few women's clubs and friends. Those friends left rather quickly after the FBI raid. Make that acquaintances? I changed my words. Yes, I've been looking for different words to call those same people. Funny how when you've got money, people adore you. She took the words out of my mouth, so I finished her thought. And run when you're broke. I smiled. Exactly. She leaned her hip against the counter and folded her arms. I don't hold ill feelings towards you, and I know he took you for everything too. But how are you going to live with yourself, knowing how many lives he's ruined? That's why I'm here. I sucked in a deep breath. The only thing the FBI didn't take was a small campground in Normal. Normal? She leaned back, pressing her lips together. Grady lived in Normal one summer while we were in college. Do you know where? I asked. Yes, I think it was a campground. He did things for the campers' children, like a summer camp for the vacationers, she said. That was a great idea. Camp for the campers' kiddos. I put that back in my memory for later use. That's how he got the idea that he wanted us to have scads of children. But I wasn't able to conceive after Junior. She blinked a few times and turned away as though she didn't want me to see her getting upset. Anyways, that was a long time ago. Interesting, because Paul had a college bet with someone, and that's how he got ownership of the campground. I can't help but wonder if Grady owned the campground somehow. There were incomplete thoughts rolling through my head. No, he didn't own it, but Paul did come visit him a lot. I remember that. She nodded and tapped the counter with her fingernail. There were some rumblings about a poker game, but Grady always blew me off when I asked him about it. Since it didn't involve me or him, I just dropped it and never thought about it until now. You can't remember any particulars about the poker game? I asked. I've never known Paul to even gamble. There appears to be a lot you didn't know about your husband. She gave me a little dig, which I let slide. Apparently, those made her feel better about the situation, and I wasn't going to take that away from her. My skin had really thickened up over the past couple of months, especially in the last few days. Anyways, I'm living in a camper in Normal. I rolled my eyes and gave a little laugh. Far cry from Fifth Avenue. At least you have a roof over your head and know that your husband is dead. There was no sympathy coming from her. Ex, I said with an exhausted sigh. You know what I mean. She pushed the sleeves up on her shirt. She looked like she was just getting started with me, and I wanted to shut that down. Do you have any other questions? I wanted to get them out of the way. How exactly do you plan on helping people out? She asked a great question that I'd not entirely figured out. One at a time. I pulled that out of nowhere. Paul hadn't been paying the manager of the campground. Said she could live there for free. I rolled my eyes. She's been spending any extra money she had to pay for the lot fees of the residential campers so they weren't evicted. She has a kind heart, and Paul took advantage of her. She happens to be a suspect since she let Paul invest her savings. I left out the part about how Dottie had gotten the savings from losing her husband and child. I didn't give back all her money, but I will continue to pay her and let her live for free on the property. I've got plans to bring the campground back to what it used to be. I dug in my purse for the brochure. I slid it across the island for her to check out. You live here? She unfolded it. On the land. I let out a snort. Paul let the campground go to ruins. I'm going to bring it back to what the brochure says it is. I've got a fundraiser planned, and a few good-hearted people in Normal have stepped up to the plate to help and donate a lot of things. That's just one woman, she eagerly pointed out. Normal used to be a vibrant community that families would flock to on vacation, just like your husband did during the summer camp. Normal still has all of that to offer. It's the campground that needs to be fixed up so I can bring income back to the town. Give people jobs. That surely has to help. It sounded so powerful to say those words out loud. I'd never really given my business plan a purpose, and this was exactly why I needed to bring the campground back. One at a time, huh? She stared at me. When's it going to be my time? Well, for starters, I need to know where Grady is. I put the brochure back into my purse. Your guess is as good as mine. She looked down, unfolded her arms, and brushed her hand along the marble island top. That morning, we just packed up the last of the kitchen items. We were having a cup of coffee on the deck. We started to talk about how we'd made all of our college plans come true. She sniffed. I could tell she was fighting back tears. I used my law degree to get him great business deals, and he used his business degree to make those deals happen. We were a match made in heaven for the horse business, as the Herald Leader pointed out in an article they'd done on our marriage. Junior was a whiz at all things computer, so we'd made sure we'd had a fully funded 529 college fund, plus all the extra money he was going to need in case he didn't get a full scholarship. He dreamed of going to Harvard to major in business and IT. That's great. I was happy to see Junior's dreams come true. Great? Her brows furrowed. He didn't get a full ride this year. She looked away. And I found out that Grady had given all of Junior's money to Paul. Her voice trailed off. Oh, my gut twisted. Junior didn't deserve this. He worked so hard in school, and we worked hard to put that money away for him. When I found out a couple of months ago that Paul had talked Grady into giving him the money around a year ago, I almost divorced him. This fall, Junior will be attending community college and working at the barbecue diner to pay for it." She pinched her lips together and began to rub them together like she was rubbing in lipstick. "I don't have the words." I looked down at my fingers and fidgeted nervously. It wasn't just one generation of lives Paul had ruined. It was the entire legacy of that generation. "I don't know how I'm ever going to repay everyone, but I'll come up with something." "What about giving him a job?" She looked me square in the face. "He can do both jobs this summer." Well, I wasn't sure how that was going to work. "Let me get the fundraiser over, and I'll see what I can come up with. The car he's driving? Yep. His other one was repoed." She made me nervous with her stare. "Do you have any idea where your husband could have gone?" I asked. "The detectives asked me the same thing. I have no clue. He didn't take a wallet, his cell, or even his car. That, too, was repoed." Her jaw clenched. "It makes him look like the killer, now that I remembered the summer camp thing. Do you think he'd heard from Paul from prison, and he planned to meet Paul there with the intent to kill him? Seek revenge?" I asked. "Grady was very angry at Paul, but he'd never hurt a fly." She wasn't going to hear of any ideas I might have had as to what happened to her husband. "Then where do you think he went?" I asked. "I don't know. It's no secret that after what he'd done with Junior's college fund, our marriage didn't fully recover. He'd been living his life, and I'd been living mine. The only times they'd cross was when we had to do something in public." She looked back at the door when the doorbell rang. "I'm sorry, Mae, but I've got some paintings to try to sell, so I can get a roof over our heads. We don't have the comforts of a camper to go home to after tomorrow." "I'm sorry." I made sure I told her again. "I'm not sure how I'm going to make it up to you and Junior, but I'm going to. I'll get back to you on a job." She blew me off and went to the door. When she didn't come back after a few minutes, I grabbed another piece of the coffee cake for the road and showed myself out. 15. Since my visit with Ava was cut short and I didn't know where to look for Grady Cox, I decided to move down my list of suspects. The only name left was Ty Randall. If ever there was a perfect motive, Ty had it. He'd gone off to make a career out of being a chef, since I wouldn't classify normal diner as fine dining. Who wouldn't be a little upset that your dreams were cut short because your father had a heart attack, almost died, and had no one but you to raise the other 2 kids at home because your mom had an early death from cancer? If that didn't sound like motive to kill someone out of anger, then I didn't know what was. And the fact that Ty lived at Happy Trails, where Paul was discovered dead, that was just too coincidental to me. All the possibilities of Ty being the killer started to take form in my head, and I practically all but called Detective Hank on him to say that Ty Randall was the killer. I'd restrained myself after I Googled nursing home and rehabilitation center in Normal and found that there was only one. From the gossip I'd heard about how Ty had to move back from his dream life as a chef back to Normal because my ex put his dad almost in the poorhouse and might be the root of his heart condition, that sounded like a good motive to me. The call to Detective Hank could wait until I checked out Mr. Randall to see exactly what I could find out there. On my 40-minute drive back, I'd even convinced myself that Ty had a great motive, and with good legal counsel, he might have a fair shot. After all, his father and brothers needed him. Why else would he be so nasty to me when all the others in Normal had been somewhat forgiving? A little leery, but still forgiving. Just as I was turning into the dual facility, my phone rang. "Hi, Dottie," I answered after I'd seen it was her name. "Hey, doll." The The big inhale from the other end of the phone was indication she was smoking a cancer stick.
Listen, Hank Sharp was here looking for you. Apparently, some lady called him and told him that you came to see her, and he's all aflutter about it.
Is that right? I slammed the shift into park and stewed a little. And to think I was going to give Junior a job.
Junior? Who's Junior? Job? If you can pay someone, you need to pay me. Which brings me to the next thing.
Another audible suck of the cigarette came through the phone.
He also wanted to know if you gave me some bribe money because of a mysterious deposit made into my bank account. When he pressed Alvin about it, Alvin folded like a deck chair.
I guess I should have just given you the cash. That's what I get for trying to be sly.
Doll, the problems of your husband don't mean you have to make good. It's all his fault. Stop trying so hard and just come back to the campground so we can just start over. Or if you've got a guilty conscience about something, I'm all ears.
The sweet Dottie on the phone wasn't the Dottie that I'd gotten to know over the last few days. All that doll stuff? What was going on? I had an idea. Is Detective Hank there with you? Am I on speakerphone? I asked. You know what, Dottie? You don't have to answer that. Let me tell you something, Detective. I was spitting mad. Dottie Swaggart and I didn't kill Paul. I've dedicated my life to repaying all the people back that Paul wronged, and the only way I can think to do that for the good folks in Normal is to bring back some sort of tourist spot, like Happy Trails, to boost the economy. If you've got a better idea, then I'm open to suggestions. Other than that, leave me alone. I hung the phone up. I sat in the car for a few minutes to regain my composure. I had a hard time wrapping my head around why Detective Hank Sharp would continue to think I had anything to do with Paul's death. I might have said I would kill him, but that was before I knew he was really dead. Dottie Swaggart aside, I was going to find out exactly where Grady Cox had disappeared to and check in on the Randalls. One of the two had something to do with Paul's death, only I didn't know which one. There were two wings to the building. The north wing was the nursing home, and the south wing was the rehabilitation center. In the middle was a big open rotunda with a circular desk. Two women were seated behind the desk, just gabbing away about something, abruptly stopping when I came in. "New PT?" One smiled at me. "PT?" I started to say, "You mean PYT?" from the Michael Jackson song, but didn't think they'd think it was funny. "Physical therapist?" she questioned. "Or OT?" "OT?" I asked. "Can we help you?" the other one said. "Yes, I'm Mae West Heimer to see Mr. Randall." I decided to make my name a little longer since West was quite unpopular around here. "Ms. Westerheimer, what's your business with Mr. Randall?" she asked. "That's none of your business," the other woman said, nudging the other. "He's down the hall in room 15. He'd love to have some company." "Thank you." I didn't stick around in fear of more questioning, and the low murmurs I heard from them as I walked away weren't all that nice. They had all sorts of ideas about who I was, including Mr. Randall's private nurse when he came home. The rehabilitation center was a place where people who needed more around-the-clock care came after an illness to help with recovery. It looked like an apartment to me. The hall was long, and there were doors on each side. Some of them had a wreath, but room 15 did not. If Mr. Randall was my father, I'd had a wreath on the door. But he wasn't, and there was no sense in bringing up memories that I'd stored in the back of my head. That included my parents. They'd been dead a long time now. Maybe that was why I had a soft spot for the Randalls, especially the two younger boys.
"Door's open,"
the gruff voice greeted my knock. "Mr. Randall?" I pushed through the door to find a frail man in a wheelchair. He had the nicest silver hair that I'd ever seen on a man, and I smiled when I pictured Ty with silver hair. In fact, I had to put my hand on my stomach from the flip-flop it gave me, making me gulp. More so, making me disturbed, since I'd not had that sort of feeling since I'd met Paul.
I was wondering when you were going to stop by here.
Mr. Randall looked at me.
I'd recognize your face anywhere.
I guess using Westerheimer at the front desk really wasn't deceiving anyone, I joked when I didn't feel too threatened by him.
Your face has been all over the news for months.
He grinned, and I could definitely see the resemblance between him and Ty.
Plus, my son.
He laughed.
I've not seen a girl give him fits in years. You got his goat.
His goat? I don't have his goat. In fact, I've not seen a goat at the campground. I made a mental note to make sure there were no goats.
Mae West, you've got a lot to learn if you're really going to be sticking around here.
He winked.
Though you and I both know you aren't sticking around, are you?
I'm sorry. Was I that transparent?
Ty told me about the fundraiser and how you've gotten stuff donated. I'm not saying you're like Paul, but you're a smart gal, graduated college with an economics degree, young, pretty. What does a town like Normal got to offer you?
He put his hand up when I started to protest.
Ty is just like you. He spent half of his life trying to get out of this town. When he finally did, and was making a good life for himself, I have this stupid heart attack and can't work.
May I? I pointed to the chair next to him.
Of course.
He grabbed the remote control and turned the TV off.
Where are my manners?
I think your son has them. I wanted to offer him some comfort that Ty was being somewhat cordial to me. You're right. A couple of days ago, I was going to sell the campground as fast as I could. Then I got here and, well, you know what it looks like. I did get the great idea to fix it up, but I have to admit that your small town has really started to grow on me.
Yep, it'll do that to you. I reckon that's why Paul couldn't leave well enough alone. I should have known years ago, when he came into town with his fancy car to visit his college buddy, that he was too important for Normal.
He didn't have to use words to tell me that it was his campground, and bet that Paul had gotten the campground from. I could see it in his eyes. What was the bet? I asked.
I bet him the campground that he couldn't get the price down low enough on the diner for me to purchase because I love to cook. The campground was my family's, and I didn't want to work it anymore. I had a family, and, like you, a dream, only it wasn't in Normal. But here I was, and if I could cook because it's my passion, I would give the campground away.
He was a straight shooter, and I admired that. What would Paul have to give up? I questioned.
We were looking to replace our city manager in a year, about the time he was graduating. When he came to Normal, he had some big ideas about the town and tourism. We weren't doing bad, but he was young and had some fresh ideas. If he lost, it was to come back here and be Normal city manager for the 4 years of the term.
He smiled real big.
I know that sounds so childish, and I could have never made him do it, but drinking makes everyone get a little liquid courage. My middle-aged ego was no match for his young ego. I'll be darned if he didn't get me the deal I needed to buy the diner.
Over such a silly bet. It was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard.
My wife and I lived on the campground. I opened the diner and enjoyed every bit of my life until I looked up one day. 10 years had gone by. We had a couple more boys than we'd intended to have because we were getting up in age. And then my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Ty had gone off to culinary school, and everything we had saved was used to pay medical bills.
He paused.
Dad, you don't owe Mrs. Westerheimer any explanation.
I looked back at the door where Ty stood, his brow cocked.
The nurses told me Dad had a visitor, a Mrs. Westerheimer. Besides, she thinks I killed Paul West. Nah.
Mr. Randall tapped his chest with his finger.
She knows deep down that you didn't do it. She just needs to hear everything herself. Her life has been turned upside down, too. The two of you are more alike than y'all want to admit. Stubborn. He's always been like his mama.
He pointed to the bed.
Sit down, boy.
Ty did what his father had told him to do. It was cute in a little boy kind of way.
Anyways, Paul would come to town every now and then with big ideas of how he was going to build the campground back up. He needed investors in his latest project. He'd done well for himself, so I put up the diner since I owned it free and clear. After the Ponzi news broke, I headed straight down to the bank and took out enough of a loan to keep my diner. That's when I had the heart attack, and Ty had to come home to help.
If it weren't for your, Ty started to say, ex, I said a little too loud.
No. Pa might have given me a little extra stress, but my arteries were all clogged up from all that fried food I cook and eat, so you can't blame him for all of it.
Mr. Randall was too kind, and I didn't blame Ty for his bitterness.
Every waking moment Ty isn't at the diner cooking or taking care of the boys. He's here with me. I told Detective Sharp that, and he checked it out.
I'm sorry that I even thought such a thing. I stood up. You are a kind man, Mr. Randall, but you're wrong about me leaving. I've already made the decision to stay in Normal until I get the campground back to the way it was when you owned it. I put my hand on his arm and squeezed. When you're up and running, I'm going to need some advice.
You've got it.
He put his hand on mine and returned the squeeze. Knock, knock. Bets Hager stood at the door with a white casserole dish in her hands and a big smile on her face. Mae! Her voice escalated. What are you doing here? She looked between me and Ty and Mr. Randall.
She's here because her nosiness extends beyond happy trails. It appears she's already spent too much time with you ladies at the laundry club.
His accent came out in spades. Why, Ty Randall, whatever are you talking about? Our Mae here was born and bred in Kentucky. She walked into the room and bent down to Mr. Randall's level. I brought your favorite cherry pie to help you get better faster. I gulped. Did I have to tell them my past, or could I just let her comment float right on by? I chose the latter.
You're just tired of cleaning my house and want me to get better.
He licked his lips. No such thing. She winked and set the dish on the stand next to the TV. Do they know when you're going to blow this joint? You look a lot better today.
That's why I'm here.
Ty walked over and lifted the tinfoil off of the pie.
The doctor called me and said that they were going to release Daddy tomorrow. Tomorrow?
Mr. Randall questioned.
I guess I better start pretending I'm sicker.
He joked.
Don't worry. I've made a place for you in the trailer. You're going to stay with me and the boys until you are really on your feet.
Ty turned to Bets.
Do you mind cleaning the house one more time?
Ty, there's really nothing to clean. No one has been there, and I feel like you're wasting your money. Bets clasped her hands in front of her.
No, a deal is a deal. Since I'm going to the camper for a few, can you clean there?
Mr. Randall wasn't letting her off the hook. All right now, don't be going and getting all upset. I'll make arrangements with Ty. She patted Mr. Randall on the shoulder. I've got to get out of here. I'll go with you. I gave a nod. Now that you're coming to Happy Trails, I look forward to hearing your ideas about how I can get that campground up and running. Bets and I said our goodbyes to the Randall men. Thank you for the car. I turned to my friend. You are welcome. Does it drive well? She asked. It's great. Actually, I drove it all the way to Lexington to see Grady Cox, Paul's best friend from college. I sucked in a deep inhale. Really? Why? She asked and pushed open the door to the outside world. The fresh air rushed into my lungs, relieving me of the stale smell of the rehabilitation center. Long story short, he and Paul have ties to Normal from way back, and I found out today that he gave Paul so much money, like millions, for his investment. I put air quotes around investment, so I didn't have to say the word scheme. Grady disappeared off the face of the earth the day Paul was killed. Then he's the killer! Bets threw her hands up in the air. We continued to walk to the parking lot. You'd think so, but Detective Hank isn't so sure. And I glanced over my shoulder at the rehab facility. Ty was standing outside with his hands on his hips, glaring at us. Grady doesn't have a strong motive like Ty Randall. That's why I was here, to talk to Mr. Randall. Ty has a strong alibi. Here. We stopped at the front of the Ford. She looked at me, and the corners of her eyes dipped. Ty has gotten the short end of the stick since his mama died, and it continued with his daddy making a deal with the devil. She didn't have to say Paul's name for me to know that she was talking about him. But Mae, you aren't going to find any better people than the Randalls. They're salt-of-the-earth folks. It appears that way. I glanced back at the front of the building. Ty was still there with that stare. It sent chills up my spine. I just hope we can find Grady Cox. We? She gave a nervous laugh. I wasn't going to say anything because I don't know you well. But Mae, you need to let Hank Sharp do his job. If I let Hank Sharp do his job, he'd have Dottie Swaggart down at the county jail behind bars, and I'm not going to let that happen. Say, I stopped her as she was on her way to her van. I meant to ask you about the thing you and the church women do with the prisoners. We have some openings. I'd love for you to join us. She got excited with her bright eyes and big smile. I hated to let her down, but that was the last thing I wanted to volunteer for. That's very admirable of you and the ladies. In fact, everything you do is admirable. But I understand that you go to the prison where Paul had been sent. There was such a fine line between talking about Paul and not talking about him. It was definitely the elephant in the room wherever I went. I don't think we ever had him, or I'd remember. Her expression stilled. You know that they keep records of who goes in and out of the prison? There's a list of visitors per inmates because we have to list the prisoners we visit. I got a list from the prison website that listed the groups that went to the prison, and I wanted to contact those groups to see if they had lists of the people they bring, because someone had to have gotten in there and somehow gotten Paul out. There had to be some connection. I know that when we went the other day, they were very strict on the places they let us go. We were able to go to a few of the buildings, but this time they made us meet with the inmates outside. She put her hand on her chest. As the preacher's wife, I shouldn't be gossiping, but I am a young woman who doesn't mind a tale or two. What does that mean? I wasn't sure if I was ever going to learn their lingo. I did overhear a couple of the inmates talking about a prison escape. They didn't call Paul by his name. They called him by his inmate number. But I know they were talking about him. Her brows lifted. They said that it had to have been an inside job, because the day he escaped, they didn't go outside because it came a Georgia flood there. Really? When I got here, the dirt was dry. I recalled how disappointed I was not having the beautiful Kentucky bluegrass and that terrible lake. "Just because it didn't rain here doesn't mean it didn't rain in Lexington," she said. "They also said that the FBI had been going through all the cells and interviewing everyone." I had to giggle when one said that he had to put away his extra segs because he won them in a poker game. The guards don't like them gambling, and he'd been questioned. "Is the prison like a real prison?" I asked, and suddenly felt sorry for Paul. There was no way I couldn't. He was human like the rest of us. Was he trying to get me when he came back to Happy Trails? Surely he knew that it was the first place the police would look for him. "It's a prison, but they aren't hardened criminals. More white-collar, like Paul," she shrugged. "I know that you want to help everyone in Normal, but I think you just need to be you and let all this play out with Paul. You can only do what you have control over, and that's Happy Trails." "Thanks, Bets. You are very kind, and you've gone above and beyond to help me." I smiled over at her while I got the car keys out of my pocket. "One day I'll pay you back." "That day will be Sunday," she reminded me with a little skip in her step. "Sometimes I need someone to help me clean. I'll let you know." 16. "I guess we can strike the Randalls off the list," I told Dottie. "Is that so?" She held on to the base of the ladder while I used Henry's staple gun to staple the party lights Bets had given me to use around the tiki bar. "I didn't think Ty did it anyways. But, Mae, I'm finding that you're one of them people who has to try it for themselves to believe it." He was with his daddy around the time Hank said Paul had been shot. I ignored her complimentary comment of me and continued to tell her what I'd learned. "I'm still so worried that he's going to try to pin it on you." "Didn't I tell you that I found me an alibi?" She took a step back, letting go of the ladder, and looked up at me. "No." I handed her the nail gun before I climbed down. "That's wonderful news. Who was it?" Alvin Dieters and his crew was putting the finishing touches on what he called the aeration system in the middle of the lake, which looked like a pineapple fountain to me. The sound of the water feature was actually soothing and relaxing. "I got to thinking," she tapped her temple. "I was having me some trouble with the satellite dish up on the roof of my camper. I had placed a call to them and was fussing with them around the time Paul was killed. It wasn't until I got my bill in the mail this morning that I remembered. I was as happy as a peacock as I took my bill right on down to the station and handed it to Hank. He did whatever magic they do with phone records and calling people, and confirmed they had me on hold several different times, adding up to almost 2 hours on the phone with them." She stuck up 2 fingers in the air. "That means 2 hours I won't get back in my life. Can you believe that?" "I'm so glad, not about the lost hours, but the fact you have an alibi." There was a relief that swept over me that made me feel like I wasn't in a huge hurry to find out who killed Paul now. Though my curiosity was still up, the only people on my list that I'd started to care about had solid alibis. I still think that Grady Cox did it. I mean, he disappears the day of, and they've not heard or seen from him. "Now you need to stop snooping now that I'm not a suspect, and we can finish up with the decorations for this fundraiser." She jerked her head to the side. "Come on, I need to show you something." "What?" I asked. "It's a surprise," she said in a slow southern twang. "So you're gonna have to come with me to find out." I do love a good surprise. I looked around the campground as I followed her towards the building I thought would make a great office one day instead of her camper. The campground was coming along. The sod had started to take, the muck from the lake was gone, and all the campsites had been cleaned up, weeded, and were ready for RVs. There was a fear of getting too excited and the expectation that we were going to be able to get some reservations. "Do you think people are going to come?" I asked Dottie and followed her into the building.
With all of Abby's social media and the ads you put out in the paper, I think we will have a handful of people."
She flipped on the light.
"Well,"
she rocked back on the heels of her shoes.
"Whatcha think?"
"Dottie!" I gasped and looked at the desk, filing cabinet, and computer. "Is this the new office?"
"Yes, ma'am. You said we needed a real office space, and I figured we'd clear out this building. That sign over there," she pointed to several metal signs, "it says office. Henry is going to hang that later today. Those are some signs I thought he could hang in the recreation center."
"That reminds me, I need to call someone I met the other day to come and get the video games in the recreation center up and running. I made a mental note to call Junior. It could be his first job for me."
"Here we got the files from my camper in order of the lot numbers. The computer isn't working yet, but I thought you could do that."
As she talked, I had an idea I'd have Junior do that, too.
"The phone is hooked up and ready for reservations."
"This is great, Dottie." My eyes filled with tears of joy.
"Don't be going and getting all soft," Dottie warned. "You said we need to run like a business, and we do. I'll be working here during the day, and you can work at night."
"I think we can work something out. Thank you." I gave her a hug.
"Yep, you're going soft on me," she joked.
"Don't you know that we hug around here?" I repeated everything I'd been hearing.
"Goodness gracious, Mae West. I think we've started to rub off on you," she teased.
"I just think you have." I couldn't stop the smile from growing ear to ear. "What do you say we head over to my storage unit? I think there's some clothes in there I can sell. I've got to find some extra cash to pay someone to get those video games up and running, along with this computer."
"Sounds good."
She walked over to the wall where there were some hooks.
"Here are the keys we need. I've got them all labeled with a little cardboard tag, so any of us can find what we need."
When we walked outside, Alvin was walking around.
"There you are."
He pointed to me, and we met in the middle.
"Buck, down at the Tough Nickel, sent over some lawn chairs and a couple Adirondack chairs, along with a couple of bourbon barrels and a popcorn machine for a donation. He said he got the chairs in for the shop, but they are used, and he figured you could use them around the lake."
Alvin pointed to his pickup truck. The white chairs were stacked up and looked like they were about to tumble right on out of there. "That's great." It took everything I had not to cry. "Alvin, thank you so much. First the lake, the fish, the sod, and now this. I'm so grateful. Your kindness has really touched me."
"Your dedication to this community has really made up for what your husband did. The good preacher and Bats are right. You were just as much a victim as we were."
He didn't have those hard facial features I was used to seeing when he talked to me before. There'd really been a shift.
"I'm sorry I didn't see that the day I met you."
I knew it was hard for him to apologize, so I let it slip on through the wind. "You've got to come in here and see the new office Dottie fixed up." I encouraged him to come in.
"I'd love to, but I've got to get down to the bank. I've spent too many afternoons off."
He declined my offer.
"Next time I see you, we'll have us a cocktail underneath that palm tree over there."
I hope it makes it until then. We both looked over at the blow-up palm trees Henry had spread out around the lake and used rope and stakes to keep them from blowing over.
"Everything looks great. And from what I hear, all the social media you're doing is getting the word out. I'm gonna put these chairs out, and then I'm gone."
He waved and headed back to his truck.
"Come on,"
Dottie waved me over.
"You're burning daylight."
The storage units were right behind the new office, and it didn't take long for us to get there. I took the opportunity to put a call in to Grady Jr. "Hi, Junior, it's Mae West." I greeted him after he answered the phone. "I wanted to know if you wanted to do a couple of jobs for me." After explaining to him what I needed, he was more than happy to come by later in the day after his shift at the barbecue diner, and we hung up.
"Here you go."
Dottie handed me the small key to the storage unit.
You'll just put the key in the lock, turn, and pull up on the handle, like a garage door."
I did exactly what she said. When the sun poured into the storage unit, it exposed everything in it.
"What in the name of—"
Dottie started to walk into the unit. "Dottie, stop!" I screamed and took out my cell phone, dialing 911. Dottie's face was snow white, her mouth was wide open, and was rendered speechless. "Yes, my name is Mae West, and I'm at the Happy Trails campground." I swallowed to try to get some saliva in my mouth. "I just opened up my storage unit, and there's a dead body in it." 17.
Exactly what happened?
Detective Hank Sharp was the first one on the scene and had already assessed the storage unit before the investigators made it to the campground. "I would offer you some coffee, but that little Keurig just takes too long." My eyes were focused on the one-cup coffee maker. Since I'd been to normal, everyone here drank coffee. Now I think I was addicted to it too.
"Mae?"
He kneeled down between my legs and turned my chin towards him.
"Are you okay? Do we need to take you to the hospital? She's seen a dead body. Again."
Dottie's sarcasm brought a smile to my face.
"See? A little humor is all she needs."
I cleared my throat and ran my hand over my face to try to focus a little more. "I'm sorry." My mouth was so dry. I licked my lips. "I'm so shocked that I don't even know what to say."
"I think you'd like to know there was a note in his pocket. He planned on meeting Paul here, since they'd gotten it when Grady had worked here."
Hank's warm hand was still resting on my leg. Underneath his hand, the nerves in my leg were all jumping, but I was sure it was the fact the images of Grady Cox's dead body sitting on my summer clothes box were tattooed on my brain.
"He shot himself."
"He did?" I questioned. Hank's eyes softened. He looked at me as if he were worried about my well-being. "Why would he do that when he has a child?"
"And a wife."
Hank pinched his lips together.
"She's on her way to ID the body. I told her to wait until he was taken to the morgue, but she insisted."
Poor Ava. The other day we were talking about how Paul had won the campground. I had no idea it was from Mr. Randall. I left her house thinking it was Ty Randall who killed Paul.
"You went to see the Coxes?"
His hand peeled off my leg, and he stood up.
"Why?"
"I had to know." My voice trailed off, and the images of Junior flooded my mind. "His son will be so upset." Now I knew that I had to offer Junior a job. "Are you sure Grady did it?" I asked.
"He admitted it. He'd written out all the details. The gun came back with his DNA on it, too," he said. "Of course, the coroner will determine when and the position he shot himself. I bet he stole my gun."
Dottie's lips twisted.
"I'm not in the camper all the time, and I don't lock it. For that reason, too." She shook a finger. "If they're going to break in, no little lock is going to stop them."
Hank and I let her ramble.
"See, it's all over now. We can get the fundraiser over with and get Happy Trails up and running with all this behind us."
Dottie rubbed my back, trying to make me feel better, but I didn't.
"What are you thinking now?"
Hank asked. "I think that Paul has hurt so many people and families beyond the money." I gulped. "I'm not sure how on earth I can make this right."
"You can't keep blaming yourself for what Paul did."
Hank searched my face.
"You can't help Grady's actions."
"How did he get out of jail?" I asked.
"We are still working on that. Since we have the DNA on the gun pulled from the lake that killed Paul, and now with what you discovered today and a confession note, that part of the investigation will go on the back burner until all of this is wrapped up."
He sucked in a big breath and rubbed his hands together.
"That being said, we pulled all your bins out and collected evidence, But we can't let you go back into the storage unit just yet."
"That's no problem," I shrugged.
"Yeah, we can take your clothes to the laundry club, since we have book club this afternoon," Dottie reminded me.
I'd much rather lay in the bed in the camper with the quilt over my head and let the days pass me by.
"I'll stop by later and get your statement, since you look like you need a break from all this. I suggest you go with Dottie."
He turned to her.
"Can I throw the bins from her storage unit in the back of your truck?"
"Sure," she nodded.
"Let's get out of here."
"Yeah, okay." There was still a niggling suspicion that something wasn't right. They weren't even addressing how Paul escaped from jail, and that seemed pretty big to me. I wasn't going to argue or even think about how I could prove that right now. Hank said they had the note from Grady, and I was just going to do what Dottie said. It was time to get Happy Trails fixed up, bring in some tourists to Normal, and probably sell the place. "I'll be right out," I declared as I shut the door behind them when they exited my camper. While my cell phone was charging in the back, I changed into a pair of jeans, flip-flops, and a t-shirt I'd bought on the way here. I tugged my long hair into a ponytail and splashed some water on my face. No matter how many times I tried to put the images of everything Paul had done out of my mind, they'd all mash together like a movie that'd just play over and over again. "Stanley?" I made a quick phone call to the lawyer. He didn't answer, so I left a message. "It's Mae West. I'm not sure if you heard, but Grady Cox confessed to killing Paul. Happy Trails isn't as bad as I thought. Everyone here is really nice, but it's not me. There's been a lot that's gone on over the past 24 hours. Now that Paul is dead and we know the killer, I think it's best that Normal isn't reminded of Paul and what he'd done to them. So I want you to go ahead and look for a buyer. Thanks, Stanley." I tapped the end button and held the phone close to my chest. My eyes filled with tears. The fundraiser would help bring in money to fix what was on the top of Dottie's list, and surely all the marketing Abby had been doing had to help. I'd give them the cash I had. I'd rather leave Normal, though I was getting used to all of them and their kindness, on a high note, than staying around and keep reminding them of what Paul had done. No matter how much I tried to distance myself from him and what he'd done, I was always going to be tied to the crime. 18. "These are amazing!" Bats continued to go through the tubs of clothes. "Every single piece is designer label," she gushed and separated them into piles. "I've seen some of them in the magazines down at the Safeway." "You can have all the ones you want." I knew I'd never wear them again after I'd spent the last week in jeans and t-shirts. "No." Abby bent her head over the laptop she'd brought. "We are going to put them on eBay, just like that Girl Boss show on Netflix." She wiggled her eyes. "How do you know all this stuff?" I questioned her. "Not many people come into the library. I've got plenty of time on my hands to learn marketing and watch Netflix. These clothes will bring in a lot of money for the fundraiser." She clicked away. #designer clothes, #hardly worn. Abby got up from the chair and grabbed a couple pieces of clothing out of the pile, taking a photo of them with her cell phone. "After these are washed and ready to ship, I'll make the eBay store live." She bounced on her toes and threw the clothes back down. "That's hand wash cycle." Bats jerked one of the tops from the top of the pile. "Abby, if you're going to take photos, put the clothes back in the right pile." Abby walked away, mocking Bats.
"When everyone is finished doing what they're doing, I've got the puzzle moved and the coffee ready for book club. We need to get started, because Mae and I have a lot to get done tonight at the campground, since it's been shut down all day."
Dottie looked over at me. A smile curled up one corner of her mouth when our eyes met. I could tell she was assessing me to see if I was all right. "I'm ready, though I didn't read the book. I was ready for some coffee and ready to get out of my own head. I wasn't going to bring it up, but my crystal ball told me about you finding a body in your clothes. Queenie tapped the fake electricity ball. Mm-hmm. She looked down into it. Shut up. You've got that scanner going. Abby walked over to the table, holding her book club book. But you can tell us all about it. According to the girls from church, Bets chirped over the sound of the beeps coming from the washing machine, where she was starting a load of my clothes. You don't need to tell us what you heard when we get to hear it from the horse's mouth. Queenie adjusted her yellow leggings after she stood up and walked over to the table where book club was set up. There's not much to tell. I had gone to see Ava Cox and her son. She said that Grady disappeared the day Paul had escaped, which makes me think he somehow helped Paul break out. I put my book on the table and rested my hand on it. None of that matters now, Dottie confirmed. Grady came to meet Paul at the campground and killed him. Rightfully. Justified. I'm not sure if anyone being murdered is justified. Bets's brows furrowed. Love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor when thy neighbor puts you in the poorhouse? Dottie grimaced. I think not. I'll teach someone with my new moves from my strike class if they try to take advantage of me. Queenie did some sort of side kick before she sat down. I'm teaching strike again tonight. You need to come. She directed her words to Dottie. I'll think about it. I did like it this morning. Dottie didn't commit. I smiled. Now, the heroine in our book didn't love thy neighbor at all. I sat there as the four of them chimed in about the romance in the book that I didn't read. I decided against any romance in my life, and that meant books, too. The coffee and company were good. When I looked and listened to them talk about the book, I couldn't help but think that in just a few days, how I'd made new friends, when in my life a few months ago, I wouldn't have been able to pick up a phone and call anyone that I'd call friend. Those women competed on who had the best clothes, best facelift, hairdresser, and so on. These ladies might have lively discussions, but they truly cared for each other, and they let me, of all people, into their circle of friendship. We got us a live one! Abby jumped up with her phone in her hand. What is she yammering on about? Dottie jerked up straight in her chair. We've got our first bid in our eBay store. Abby hurried over to the laptop and opened it. She clicked away on the keyboard. Oh, my. She looked up at me. You're gonna have all the money you need to get Happy Trails up and running. Isn't it great? Bats reached over the table and squeezed my hand. Everything is coming together like it's supposed to. What are you talking about? Supposed to? Queenie snapped. Paul's killer has been brought to justice. You and Normal can put all of this behind us. She beamed at me. You are making good on your promise to give back to Normal. Getting Happy Trails back to what it used to be is exactly what we need to move forward. The ladies rushed over to the computer to see what Abby was gushing about. My stomach dropped. There was no way I could tell them that when it was all said and done, I was going to move on. Because I knew if we all took a good, hard look at the situation, no matter how much I gave, my living here was just a constant reminder of what Paul had done to them. The book club meeting was cut short with all the hubbub about the clothes and eBay. I'm telling you, it's all the hashtags and social media I'm doing. Abby took the credit, and she should have. I can't wait to see what happens with the fundraiser. I put an ad out in the surrounding towns' newspapers, an ad in RV Livin', Campin' Life, and the National Park magazines. Where on earth did you get the budget for that? I questioned, thinking how much money I was going to have to pay her back and the time it'd take. They owed me. I give out free stuff for them all the time at the library. Abby waved away the concern I had. It's me giving to you for giving to Normal. The ladies had a field day with the clothes. It was funny to watch because they just couldn't believe how much in demand used fancy clothing was on the eBay. I'm going to get out of here while we still have some daylight. There were some finishing touches that the campground needed before tomorrow's big fundraiser. I hope the police have cleared the crime scene.
Surely they have, Dottie quipped. There wasn't much to do but take out the body.
They did give you the bins, Abby shrugged. It just seemed all too easy. I gnawed on my lip and looked at my new friends. I mean, he locked himself in my storage shed and killed himself?
Honey, you never know the mind of people. Dottie stood up. Let's get back so we can put the finishing touches on the campground before tomorrow.
We said our goodbyes and made sure they had their duties all laid out, so when they got to the campground, they could go ahead and start working. Dottie and I got into her pickup truck, and while she paid attention to the road, I gave Junior a call.
I guess you heard.
His voice was somber on the other end of the phone. I'm sorry. I found him. It wasn't something I probably should have told the young man, but he seemed so much older than he really was. How is your mom?
She's between grieving and relieved. It's the strangest thing, he said. She's glad she doesn't have to stay up at night, wondering where he is now that she knows. But she's trying to wrap her head around what he'd done and why, leaving us here alone.
How are you? I asked.
Dying to get out of this house. I don't like seeing her this way.
His sadness came through the phone. If you do need to get away, I'd love for you to take a look at my video games at the campground in the recreation building. I probably should have had all this worked out, but I'm new to all this business stuff. It was new territory for me, and I was kinda liking it.
That'd be great. I need the drive, and to get my mind off things.
He sounded a little better, but I knew deep down he was grief-stricken.
My mom went to the scene. Did you see her?
No, I let the police do their work and left. I feel so responsible, I gulped.
If you feel responsible over my dad, don't. He was a grown man, and he did that to himself.
His words somehow touched my soul.
You're doing everything you can with what you've got to make everything right in the world. Remember that, Mae West.
Who knew that the best advice during this entire situation would come from a teenage boy?
I'll be over later,
was the last thing Junior said before hanging up.
I can't get over how different Happy Trails already looks.
Dottie brought me out of my own thoughts.
The sign turned out real nice.
She drove the truck underneath the newly painted and hung sign that read Happy Trails Campground at the entrance of the park. That's fantastic. I turned around and looked out the back window to get another look at it from behind. Thank you for staying. I read the back.
Henry and Ty Randall really worked hard on it over the past couple of days.
She pinched a smile.
They wanted to surprise you.
That they have. I turned back around. It wasn't until I took a long look around the campground that I grasped all the work we really had done. The mowing, weed-eating around all the buildings, as well as picking up all the trash, really did clean it up. Then the freshly laid sod and the new fountain in the middle of the lake added to that campground feeling. The lawn chairs scattered around the water were inviting. Henry was repairing the old dock, and Ty was putting in a few of the pedal boats that had been sitting next to his camper. He looked up and caught me staring at him. Technically, I wasn't staring so much at him as at the muscles on his shirtless back. The big grin on his face made me think he knew I was staring at him. I glared back, only to throw him off. The office sign had also been hung, and the windows to the office looked spick and span. Who on earth did all this? I asked.
Everyone who lives here chipped in. I sent them all messages that we needed to help out, too.
Dottie never ceased to amaze me. By the end of the afternoon, everything on my end was completed. The only thing we had to do in the morning was to get the desserts from the church women, the campfires going with all the homemade camp food, the kids' games all set up, and drinks for the tiki bar, all of which wasn't on my list of to-dos. "You've got everything you need?" I asked Junior after he showed up, and I took him to the recreation center.
"I've got all my tools here."
There was a red ring around his eyes from where it looked like he'd been crying.
"Thanks for getting me out of the house. Mom was crying over moving. Then she was crying because we're moving to this apartment in town where I'm going to have to sleep on the couch, not to mention that I'm not going to the college I want."
She's bringing up all the things that she's felt and feeling. I understand. I patted his shoulder. You just need to give her time.
"Yeah, that's what the grief counselor told me."
He shrugged.
"I have a customer at the barbecue joint that has been giving me free therapy in exchange for food once a week. It's been helpful."
"That's so great." I twisted back and forth. "As you can see, I don't have all the stuff set up yet. Those signs will be hung tomorrow. I will clean up the popcorn machine, too. If you want to use that bourbon barrel for anything, go ahead. If you aren't doing anything tomorrow, I'd love for you to come and be in charge of the kids who are coming. I'll pay you."
"Mae,"
he put his hands together.
"Thank you. That's great. We need the money. That's actually why I'm late. I picked up a late shift this afternoon at the diner. Mom got a part-time job at a law firm."
"That's great." I was glad things weren't looking so bleak. "If we do well tomorrow with sign-ups, I wanted to know if you'd be interested in coming to work here this summer for children's summer camp." It was what his mother and I had discussed, but I was sincere.
"Done. I can work at the barbecue joint and here. It'll be great. Thank you."
He bowed. "You are very welcome." The sun had long gone down, and the dark had blanketed the campground. "I'm beat. Just lock the door behind you when you leave tonight."
"Will do,"
he nodded.
"And thanks again."
"No problem." I stepped outside, and the quiet hit my chest like a ton of bricks. The lightning bugs and the moon helped lead the way back to my camper, but the dark was something eerie.
"Mae?"
The voice came from the darkness, making me jump around. "Ty!" I gasped and held my hand to my chest. "You scared me."
"Well, with everything going on, I could see why you'd be a bit jumpy."
He laughed. "Yeah." I swallowed back my heart that had jumped up into my throat from being scared half to death. "I'm just not used to all of this." I glanced up and looked into the sky.
"You're the city girl that's always been in the city. I'm a country boy who moved to the city for a chef job."
He took a seat right on the ground.
"Sit."
"There?" I questioned.
"Mae West, the ground is the best place to be to look up."
He patted the ground before he laid back with his hands clasped behind his head, resting them on the ground.
"The stars are still over a city."
I plopped down next to him and laid down in the same position. The entire dark sky was filled with twinkling stars.
"In the city, the building lights never really let the skyline get completely dark like it is here. When you see it for the first time, there's nothing like it."
I could feel his staring at me. "Can you believe that there's so many galaxies up there?" I asked in a whisper.
"Why are you talking so soft?"
he asked and propped himself up on the elbow, staring at me. "I don't know. It's like church or something. Being respectful for the beauty or something." I was glad it was dark because I blushed from his smile. "I know it sounds stupid."
"Mae West, you are far from stupid. That's what scares me."
He tugged something out of his pocket.
3 months' rent.
"You didn't have to pay tonight," I said.
"Just because we are having a moment doesn't mean you can go soft on me."
He stuck the money on my stomach and laid back down.
"Are you going back to the city once the campground is back on its feet?"
He was smarter than I thought. Are you going back to wherever you came from once your dad gets on his feet? I asked.
Ah, see? He snapped a finger at me. You are smart.
Mm-hmm, I chuckled.
I love the city, and I love cooking. When I decided to leave normal and my dad, plus those little squirts, it was the hardest decision of my life.
Where did you go? I asked.
San Francisco. So many young people there. I had a farm-to-table gig going.
His voice harmonized with the sound of the grasshoppers.
Say, have you ever caught lightning bugs?
No, I started to laugh. Is that a thing?
Yeah. Thank you for doing the sign.
He jumped to his feet.
Let's grab a couple of jars. I'll show you.
He reached down for me to take his hands to be pulled up. When our fingers touched, my heart did a flip-flop. We quickly let go when I got to my feet. I have some jars in the camper left over from the previous owners. I tilted my head towards my RV. It's closer, too.
And we don't have to tell my brothers what we're doing, or they'd want to join us.
There he went again with that smile. What do we need? I asked, to keep the conversation going and not have that odd silence, even though I'd caught lightning bugs many times as a child.
First, we will put some grass in the bottom of the jar. Then we try to catch them as they light up.
He made it sound so easy. Like in our hands? I asked.
Yes, it's not like they're fast.
He laughed again at me. I opened the door to the camper, and it was just stinky. Oh, gosh. I fanned my hand in front of me. What is that smell?
Musty. You really need to clean out this thing if you're going to live in it.
He stepped in behind me.
You're going to need new bedding, new curtains, and a good cleaning.
He opened the window over the kitchen sink to let air in.
And clean out the window sills. I have a good cleaning solution for you.
The knock at the door made us look at each other. When I opened it, I was shocked to see Detective Hank Sharp standing there.
I thought I'd bring this by as a sort of a peace offering, since I razzed you so much about the investigation.
He held a box with a bow on top.
It's a coffee maker. I figured if I stopped by, you can make a pot instead of that Keurig thing.
Oh, I was in a bit of a pickle, wondering if I let him in or tell him I was about to catch lightning bugs with Ty Randall.
I'll get you that cleaning solution tomorrow.
Ty made the decision for me.
Hank?
He nodded as Hank stepped out of the way, making room for Ty to leave the RV. Okay. I wasn't sure what to say. What about the jar?
I've got to get my brothers in bed. I didn't even notice the time.
I heard him call in the dark, but couldn't see him.
So, want to break it in?
Hank asked.
I also brought decaf and regular.
He nodded towards the bag in his hands. It's been a long day, I sighed. Tomorrow is going to be longer.
Fine.
He handed me the box and bag.
Did I disturb anything between you and Ty Randall?
Nope. I shook my head.
Around here, we don't really call before we come by. We just kinda show up, and I'm sorry if I caught you off guard.
It was nice to see Hank's softer side.
I also wanted to make sure you were okay. Now that this is all behind you, you can move on with your life.
Yeah, my life, I laughed. I don't even know what that looks like myself. 19.
Who's the new kid?
Henry had walked around the lake and lit the tiki torches the next day before it was time for the fundraiser to begin. That's just another person I'm trying to help from the fallout of Paul's bad decisions. I pulled my hand up to my brows to shield the sun as I looked across the lake at Junior, getting all his dodgeballs in the bourbon barrel for one of the games he'd gotten for the kids. His dad was the one I found in the storage unit.
The guy that killed Paul?
Henry asked. Yeah, his wife and son lost everything, like everyone else. And the best I could think of was to give him a job, to help pay back some of the college fund that Paul had talked his dad into giving him. The magnitude of what Paul had done to these families was still just unimaginable to me. Every time I thought about it, I had to force it out of my head, or the guilt would stop me from doing what I was trying to do, help everyone.
That's a noble thing, but you've got to stop burdening yourself with it.
Henry patted my back and continued on his way. I knew that his words were true, and now that Paul's killer had been brought to justice, it was time for me to continue on with my business plan of bringing business back to normal and the Daniel Boone National Park, like old times when the town was thriving, by hosting a good fundraiser.
What you thinking about?
Dottie walked up with an unlit cigarette in her fingers. Looking at what we accomplished in just a few days, I pointed to the lake. Can you believe what a little fountain and aeration can do?
I believe in what can be done by a smart woman who has found herself again, even after a tragedy.
Dottie put the cigarette in her mouth and extended her arms to give me a hug.
Who's that?
I pulled away and looked over my shoulder at Junior. He had the dodgeball area all set up next to the recreation building. That's Grady Cox's son. I looked back at her.
Honey, you ain't going to be able to save them all,
she said what everyone had been saying lately to me. He's a good kid, and he deserves to go to college and start over. I watched as he put the hula hoops on the ground, wondering what he was going to do with those. He looked over at us, took off his hat, and gave a good wave in the air. I waved back and noticed Dottie had given him a slight gesture with her hand.
I've seen that kid somewhere.
She squinted, tilting her head to the left and the right. On TV. I hated the news coverage of Happy Trails after it was announced that Grady was found in the storage shed. His mom is the one who gave the interview on that Friday night national news show.
I bet you're right. Poor kid.
She shook her head. I'll introduce you to him because he's going to run the children's activities when we get enough campers in here. I think it's a great idea to offer the kids something while we have a parent activity. I wasn't sure what those activities could be, but I planned on making it just as much fun as the children's program.
You are exactly what Happy Trails needed. I didn't have the energy or the giddy-up that you've got to keep something like this crazy place up and running,
she cackled. Are you not going to light that cigarette? I asked, when I noticed she'd just been holding it between her fingers.
Nah, I'm trying to quit. I went to that stupid jazzercise class with Queenie. I couldn't make it through the first grapevine, she said. I did like the strike class.
She did some sort of jabbing. Good for you. I tried not to bust out laughing. I could only imagine what she and Queenie looked like. I bet you feel better.
No, I don't,
she grumbled.
Hi there,
she called to Junior when we got closer. He dragged his hat off his head and smiled at her.
I swear I know you.
You do? He asked.
Have you been to the barbecue joint in Lexington? I work there a few days a week.
Nah. Her eyes narrowed and she shook her head.
Somewhere else.
I told her it was the TV. I shrugged and pointed to the hula hoops. What are those for?
I thought of 2 games since we're a little tight on funds. The first is where they will do an obstacle course in them and around them while they're on the ground. Then a hula hoop contest.
He looked back at us.
You look like you are a mean hula hooper,
he charmed Dottie. Her face reddened to the color of her hair.
I was good as a kid, but I've not done it in years.
She shrugged him off.
Go on, pick one up. You know you want to,
he teased. She smiled.
Okay.
She walked a few feet and stepped into one, bringing it up around her waist.
Say, I remember you.
You came into the diner. He gave a second go at that idea.
Nope. You came here a few weeks ago, asking about a hookup.
The hula hoop didn't stay around Dottie's waist for very long. Maybe she got one hip rotation out of it. You even filled out a form.
No, ma'am, it wasn't me. He shook his head. I got the Pac-Man game up and running, Mae.
It was you. She snapped her fingers. I know it was.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I've never been to Normal, and certainly not at this campground.
Junior walked towards the recreation center.
I wanted to show you how I moved some of the video games around so they weren't on the same electrical outlets, and it would trip the breaker.
He motioned for me to follow him. We left Dottie standing outside as she tried to do the hula hoop a few more times. The recreation room looked really good. The old metal signs had been hung. The ping-pong table sat in the middle like it was ready to go, and the beanbag chairs were scattered all over the place. It looked like a child's paradise. That popcorn smells so good, I said, and looked over at the popcorn machine. The top of the container was bobbing up and down as the popcorn spilled over its sides.
Wait until you taste it.
The pride on Junior's face went from the sparkle in his eyes to the big grin on his face.
Add a little butter, and you can't get this good of popcorn at the movies.
He pushed a bag of tools out of the way.
I'll get those up before anyone gets here. I just wanted to make sure everything was working before I put them back in the shed.
He picked up a flathead screwdriver and shoved it in his back pocket. The video games look great. I loved seeing the images playing on the screen. Truly, you've done a great job. I moseyed over to the area where we had some jump ropes and chalk in bins the kids could take outside and play. This is a perfect area by the door. I was so happy that I let Junior come in here and make it his own. I could see how proud he was and excited.
I do know you.
Dottie just wasn't giving it up.
You did come here a few weeks ago. I was giving you a tour when the FedEx came to drop off Mae's boxes from that fancy lawyer of hers.
Dottie, my brows formed a V. He's never been here. It's all the news media.
Yes, he has. I took him into my camper to fill out the paperwork so I could open your storage unit for the FedEx.
She planted her palm on her head.
I forgot about you being in my camper because I might have peeked a little bit in the boxes after they were placed in the storage unit.
She smacked her hands together.
When I remembered I left you there, I came back and you were gone.
I looked over at Junior and was about to tell him to ignore her, but his body language had shifted. He'd tensed. His jaw was clamped shut. His eyes were fixed on Dottie.
Junior?
I asked in a hushed whisper. Are you okay? There was a second that I thought he was going to say something, but his nostrils flared in and out a few times.
You've got something up your sleeve, and me and Mae want to know what it is.
Dottie was relentless. She wasn't going to let it go.
Listen here, you old bat.
Junior jerked the tool from his back pocket. You don't know what it's like to spend all your life with a goal to go to a specific college. When someone takes that from you, like your father and his best friend, you tend to get a little on edge. What are you saying? I asked Junior and focused my eyes on the screwdriver he appeared to be gripping.
Did you steal my gun?
Dottie spat back at him.
I stole your gun because her husband stole my life.
He jerked the screwdriver up and jabbed it my way. What's going on here? I questioned.
Mae West, get a grip. This here feller came here and stole my gun. Don't you see? He's Paul's killer.
She shook her finger at him.
You killed your own daddy, didn't you? You ought to be ashamed of yourself. For trailer trash, you're pretty smart.
He glared at Dottie. No, that's not necessary. We're doing good getting the park up and running. I wasn't sure why I was trying to have a conversation with him. Maybe it was my nerves, because at the moment, I felt like I was going to throw up. So let's just get on with what we need to do before everyone gets here for the fundraiser.
No wonder you had no idea what your loser husband was doing. You're clueless.
There was a sarcastic tone in his voice.
If you think that I'm going to let either of you leave this building alive, You're crazy.
You don't have to do this. You have a great future in front of you. There had to be some sort of good in the kid.
Future? Paul West stole my future and my family. When I went to see him in prison, he wasn't one bit remorseful.
His chest heaved up and down.
He wasn't done making deals. He told me that if I used my computer skills and make it look like he was released early, then he'd make sure he'd get my college fund back.
Did you really steal Dottie's gun? I asked. Thank goodness I didn't replace the gravel, because I could hear cars pulling in, and I was buying time in hopes someone would walk in.
Yep, I wasn't planning on stealing it until I snooped around and saw it. It wasn't until the FedEx guy said your name, and I knew that you were coming here. I wanted to kill Paul and put him in the storage unit, but as you know, it didn't work out that way.
There was a pleasure on his face that only evil could show. How did you free Paul? I asked with an evil tone.
Easy. I hacked into the system on the day of inmate releases and had his paperwork all ready to go. When they finished processing him and the rest of the men getting out that day, I went back into the system and erased everything I did.
His arrogant, shallow features made me want to smack them off his face.
The FBI can't even figure it out. Idiots, he boasted. We had it worked out where he'd meet my dad here. When I told my dad to meet us, he wasn't as happy as I thought he would be.
Why your own father? I couldn't wrap my head around it. He loved you.
He loved me so much that he gambled my life away. He could have used different money.
His voice cracked. He cleared his throat, and it seemed to get him refocused.
I gave him the chance to apologize to me for what he'd done. I wanted Paul to see what he did to us. When my dad laughed and said it was his money, he didn't owe me anything, I shot him.
An evil explosion of deep laughter came out of him.
You should have seen Paul's face. He was so scared. And I told him that's how me and my mom felt. He begged until I put a bullet in his head.
You don't have to hurt me and Dottie, right, Dottie? I looked at her with big eyes so she'd go along with me, but that didn't work out as planned.
Heck no. What is he going to do, jab us with a screwdriver? The police already have my gun, she snarled.
Junior reached down and picked up one of the jump ropes.
Smarty pants.
He threw the rope at Dottie. Out of reflexes, she caught it.
I want you to tie Mae up. Then I'll show you what I'm going to do with this screwdriver.
He twisted the tool in the air like he was using it. What are you doing? I whispered when she started to tie my hands behind my back. This is not how I planned to go out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
She ho-hummed and tugged my wrists together when she tied the rope.
Now what? Sit down, he instructed me.
I slid down the wall and landed in a crisscross position. There were some murmurs outside of the building. Dottie and I looked at each other. Junior looked out the door window. He put his finger up to his lips. Shh, he warned.
Mae?
Detective Hank yelled my name.
Do you know where she went? She was with Dottie a while ago, Henry said from the other side of the door. She was getting the new kid set up. What new kid? Hank asked. The son of that guy that she found dead in her storage unit.
The words started to run together after Junior grabbed me up and took Dottie by the arm, jerking us into the storage closet.
I swear if either of you say a word, I will kill you right here,
Junior warned us in a whisper. Listen, I know that the fundraiser probably won't bring in much money, but if you let us go, I swear I will give you every single penny of it. Hank and Henry entered the recreation building.
You mean Junior as in Grady Cox, Jr.?
I heard Hank ask Henry.
Yep, she called him Junior,
Henry confirmed.
If that's the case, Mae could be in trouble. I've been looking for him because the detailed DNA report came back, and it appears that the DNA we took for his father's on the gun found in the lake is what we call DNA familial, Hank said.
If I was the only person in here with Junior and not Dottie, I'd yelled or fought him, but I couldn't risk Dottie.
DNA familial?
Henry asked. Dottie and I looked at each other, then we looked at Junior. He dragged his finger along his throat, like he was going to hurt us worse if we even moved an inch.
It's where we can use the DNA database and break it down so much that it can pinpoint the actual family member. Very fascinating. Which brings me back to Junior.
As I listened to Hank, I imagined him reading my mind and knowing we were in here.
Hi-ya!
Dottie's leg swung up and tagged Junior right in his ribs, knocking him out the storage room door and onto the ground.
That's what you get for calling me trailer trash.
Before I could even get myself out of the storage unit, Hank had already wrestled Junior on his stomach and tied his arms behind his back. Dottie had quickly untied my hands. That was awesome. My jaw was on the floor.
I'm glad to see that strike jazzercise class is working.
Dottie winked and patted me.
Are you okay?
I nodded and rubbed my wrists.
That's one of the best hog ties I've ever seen.
Henry took notice. Are you okay? Hank asked me with a deep-set concern in his eyes. Yeah, I choked out nervously. I'm fine. I gulped.
I know. He killed Paul and his father.
Hank didn't make me finish the sentence.
Henry, you packing? Got my conceal and carry right here.
Henry patted his back pocket with his wallet in it before he tugged up his pant leg, and his gun was strapped to his ankle.
Good. I want you to keep a close eye on our friend here while I go call for backup.
He nodded.
Dottie, you take Mae back to your camper. I'll be there shortly.
What about the fundraiser? I asked. I can't let Paul ruin it, and if there's cops all over, no one will want to come. They'll continue to think this is a campground for criminals.
I'll take Junior in my car to the station.
Hank pointed a finger at Henry.
Keep a close eye on him while I go get my car.
The three of us walked out. To my surprise, there were cars lined up as far as I could see. The band was tuning up. The smell of campfire food drifted in the air, and the Bible thumpers were busy setting up their dessert table. Things were in full swing, and no one knew what had just taken place in the recreation building. I thought you stopped smoking, I asked Dottie Swaggart on our way over to the office.
It's not every day that some lunatic says he's going to kill you with a screwdriver, she said through a pillow of smoke. Just a puff.
She snuffed out the cigarette.
There you are. I've been looking all over for you.
Ty ran up behind us. Dottie went ahead and walked into the office, leaving me with Ty.
I wanted to thank you for all you're doing around here. I didn't give you a fair chance. Around here, we like to see action more than words. You've proven that you care about normal and making things right.
His southern drawl put chills along my arm. Thank you, was all I could muster up. I put my hand out. Truce? He wrapped his arms around me and pulled me into a hug.
Don't you know we hug around here?
He asked, his heartbeat thumping against mine. I glanced over his shoulder. Hank had stuck Junior in the back of his big black car, and when he turned around, his eyes fixed on me and Ty. There was a few-second pause before he jerked the door of his car open and got in.
Truce.
Ty pulled away just as Hank's car passed.
Now, let's get this fundraiser going.
Yeah. My heart dropped. All of these feelings were uncharted territory to me, and now was not the time to explore them. Let's go raise some money. 20. The afternoon was filled with a bluegrass band, food, and friends. Mr. Randall was in charge of all the donations, and it helped me relax, visit with the campers, tourists, and meet some of the locals. I had to admit that my Gucci looked real good, stuck up under Anne's arm. Dottie was in the office making reservations, which must have been going good because she didn't come out until all the folks were gone and the stars were out.
As far as I can reckon, we're full up until next summer.
There was a huge smile on her face.
Mae West, you've saved the campground. I'm happy to say.
Mr. Randall and Ty walked up with a couple of sleepy boys following behind.
You've made enough money to not only fix the washer and dryer, but upgrade the electrical circuits too. You're going to have a first-class campground.
Are you kidding me? Tears came to my eyes. I can't believe it. I choked back the lump in my throat.
You did good, girl.
Dottie yawned and pulled her arms over her head in a big stretch.
It's been a very long day. From almost getting stabbed with a screwdriver to taking all those reservations, I'm beat. Come on, boys, let's get you in bed.
Mr. Randall took his younger two sons back to the camper and left me and Ty there alone. I looked around the lake, trying not to look at Ty. The campground was starting to look exactly like the brochure. The empty lawn chair next to us faced the lake that glistened under the moonlight, just like in the picture. I've been wanting to sit in a lawn chair in this exact spot since I got the brochure. I eased down into the chair and extended my legs.
May I?
Ty asked and pointed to the end of the lawn chair. Of course. I dragged my feet up and bent my knees to make room. I just might get that vacation after all.
May?
Ty's voice was soft. He reached back and put his hand on my knee. An electric shock waved through me. The lightning bugs flickered over the lake, looking like twinkling lights. The crickets chirped in rhythm, and the top of the water rippled out from the little fish that Alvin had stocked the lake with.
I was wondering if you'd like to...
The sound of tires spitting up gravel caught our attention. The headlight beams of the car were a spotlight on us. I sat up and felt Ty's hand slide down to my leg. When I saw it was Stanley, my lawyer, getting out, I quickly turned back to Ty. "What were you saying?" I asked.
May, is that you?
Stanley had gotten out of his car and headed towards us. "Ty, what were you saying?" I asked again, but Ty was too busy looking at Stanley.
May, I don't think I've ever seen you in nothing less than a pantsuit.
Stanley's eyes rose.
Which brings me to believe that you'll be happy to know that I've got you a buyer. A buyer?
Ty looked at me in surprise.
Yes, Mrs. West and I've been looking for a buyer for Happy Trails.
Stanley just couldn't see me trying to get him to shut up.
I'll leave you two alone.
Ty got up. He looked down at me.
Forget what I was about to say.
I stared wordlessly at him as my heart pounded in my chest. There was some confusion swirling deep down within me that I couldn't exactly put a finger on.
What was that about?
Stanley asked. Couldn't this wait until tomorrow? I asked and stood up. He dug through the bag he had with him and pulled out some papers.
I was supposed to be here earlier, but I got lost. It appears this social media campaign you have going on really did get the word out. We have a full offer. He smiled and held the papers out to me. You have a full offer and millionaire status again.
Stanley, thank you for coming, but you wasted your trip. I ripped up the papers and handed them back to him. I'm staying put.
You're staying in Normal?
There was shock and awe on his face.
This isn't your normal life, May. If you take the deal, you can go back to what you're used to.
Normal Kentucky may not be normal, but it's my kind of normal. I handed him the papers and eased back down into the lawn chair with my arms pulled up behind my head. I won't be needing your services anymore. There were a few huffs and puffs that had come out of Stanley before he left, and out of the corner of my eye, I could see Ty watching my every move. I closed my eyes and sucked in a deep breath of the fresh smell of the new Kentucky bluegrass grass as a new and unexpected warmth surged through me. Home. I was home.